2019, the day before Thanksgiving, as one might say, the day where a lot of people get DUIs and it ruins their Thanksgiving. This is the Deeper Dive NBA edition presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, home of the baller, making ballers every single day. And we want to contribute and help them do that. Doing God's work. Go to awesemo.com, go to the NFL articles, and you'll see, well, you know what? Any of the showdown articles that'll be up for tomorrow, click that. The Yahoo link will be right towards the top in green. You click it. When you sign up, use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. YSRPs, baby. Good as cash to be used on the site to win or play and win real money. Their turkey trot filled up really quick. I mean, yesterday. But they still got some great Thanksgiving contests, some very low management fee contests, and some without management fees at all if you get in early enough. Also, contests where if you're new, you don't have to be playing against some of the top players. I believe it's called the No Veteran Contest, and a lot of great NBA contests as well. So if you want to sign up and you haven't done so yet, and you want to get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points to be used on the site to play and win real money, do it through us at awesemo.com. Click the NFL tab, click the articles. You'll see all these showdown articles for tomorrow. Upon doing so, click that link, use the sign-up code AWESEMO, and be on your way. Get them YSRPs. Become a baller this evening. I'm Dave Locker. With me, Adam Scher. 14 games, baby. How you feeling?
Doing pretty good. I think that there's a lot to talk about here, obviously.
You literally told me you weren't feeling good before the show.
What'd you say?
You literally told me you weren't feeling good before the show.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to complain about it on the show. It's not really something I do.
I don't mean about the slate. Wait, you mean you didn't want to come on here and say, listen, guys, I'm just not feeling so hot today?
Yeah, who wants to hear that shit? Like, as far as they're concerned, I feel great. As far as you and Josh are concerned, I'm miserable.
All right. Well, sorry for calling you out. Go ahead. Proceed.
Yeah, lots of games. Should be fun. Lots to talk about. I guess fortunately, like there's a lot of injury news, but there's not that much injury news. Like it could be a lot worse, I guess, for a 14 gamer.
Well, let's before we jump into this, because we have a ton to talk about, get into a couple of the big ones. One of them, DeAndre Jordan has been ruled out just moments ago, a few minutes ago. So there's that. But then you've got Rudy Gobert, Clint Capella, John Moran. Now, some of these we might be leaning more towards probable than doubtful or even questionable. But a couple of others in Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Draymond Green, Kevin Love, and then the guys that are already out, guys like Aaron Gordon, Kyrie Irving, Lowry remains out, Kawhi Leonard, Aaron Baines, Derek Favors. So there are a lot, but you're right. There's not a ton of questionables given that we have 14 games, but I do think some of those guys could be pretty significant in the event that they're ruled out.
Yeah, I think the ones I'm most concerned about, like getting news 5 minutes before lock or 5 minutes after lock or whatever, are Draymond, Gobert, and John Morant.
Right. Those are the main ones that I'm mostly worried about. Once you get past that, it's guys that if they're out, maybe you make some minor adjustments, but nothing that's going to completely torpedo your process.
Right.
Yeah, it was awesome. All right. So let's dive right into it. We'll hit on the odds, the spread, and any injuries as we get to these games. Now, I think it's fair to say some of them we're going to spend less time on than others. I want to make sure that we get the big games in here and the ones that mean the most from a fantasy standpoint. You know, you have a game at 240 total, one at 239, one at 232, another at 123. You got like 6 or 7 above 225. And then you got a couple really ugly ones here with totals below 215. That certainly doesn't mean that we're not going to find value, but as a whole, those games are oftentimes not as appealing. Indiana and Utah, looking at the second lowest total on the slate, 210.5. Pacers 2-point favorites at home, 106.3 total for them, 104.3 for the Jazz. Let's start with the Pacers and get into some of the pricing on a few of these guys because we know it's not a good matchup. Utah plays at a slow pace, excellent defense. And actually one thing that I wished we had discussed on the show the other day was we were running really short on time, but it was if Rudy Gobert was out, how did that affect somebody like Yanis Antetokounmpo? who is leading the league in points in the paint. So let's go ahead and just assume that he's in and assume that he's out. We'll do the scenario for both when it comes to guys like Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner, and really anyone that produces in the paint around the basket, and how Rudy Gobert influences them based on his status.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's out, it would be a positive impact for Brogdon too, just because of how often he drives. You wouldn't have Gobert there at the rim. Overall, I think it's just the defense isn't as good with Gobert. It's still a slower paced team that is going to be solid defensively, but Gobert's presence, obviously, if he's out, it just makes all of those guys, Sabonis, Turner, Brogdon, a bit more appealing. I still don't think that I would say, like, Brogdon's 8,300 on FanDuel. He's only 6,600 on DraftKings. I think he's a good play on DraftKings with or without Gobert. I think it's tough to get to him on FanDuel with or without Gobert. So I wouldn't say it makes a huge difference to me in terms of my exposures to the Indiana guys, but I think that it does, if Gobert is out, at least make them a little bit more appealing, where if I'm landing on them, I'm a little less upset.
Jun Kim in the YouTube chat, split first 5 ways on FanDuel, 400K because of Awesemo. First 5-figure win. Thanks, guys. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. Go blow it on Black Friday. No, really, though, awesome win. And we love to hear that type of stuff. So what are you doing with Indy right now? As far as across the industry goes, do you see this being a site-specific thing on a lot of these guys like you just talked about?
On Brogdon specifically, because he's 6,600 on DraftKings, he's still not a core play there because you have the Miami guards, you have Kemba Walker, who's only $100 more. But at that price point, it makes him a really, really easy like tournament pivot to someone like Kemba, or in addition to Kemba, where you're at least getting a lot of upside, even though it's a really tough matchup. On FanDuel, I'm less interested. You know, you have Sabonis at 8,100 on FanDuel, which is a pretty solid price point, but there's still other power forwards that I like a bit more that we'll get to. So I don't think that there's anyone that I would consider a core play, but I think that the salary for Brogdon on DraftKings is at least worth tournament consideration.
Yeah, I think so too. And with 14 games, we really do have to be specific and narrow things down. But if Rudy Gobert is out, a guy like Domantas Sabonis is at least a lot more appealing than he would be with Gobert. With Gobert in, I'd have virtually no interest in Sabonis. If Gobert is out, I do think it helps him a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you.
What about Utah? Again, we can hit on whether Gobert plays or doesn't. Will we see Tony Bradley into the mix? Dude, it looked like he was on pace for a monster game, right? I think he had close to 30 fantasy points in the first half. But he's racked up 5 fouls in back-to-back games where he's got the spot start over Rudy Gobert. Outside of that, he's been a phenomenal per minute guy, given his status as not really a well-known player. Donovan Mitchell, $7,600 on DraftKings. And then, basically a bunch of other guys that are a little bit priced out of the range that I feel good about. What are you thinking here?
Not a whole lot on this side that I like either. If we get the Gobert, or I guess we will get the Gobert news, this game's at 7. Bradley would become a reasonable value option. You mentioned the fouls last game, and on one hand, he played 23 and a half minutes. Jeff Green closed over him. I don't think Green closing was fouls related, but Bradley did have a shortened stint to start the third quarter due to fouls. So maybe you would have seen, 28 minutes instead of 24 or something like that. And only 4,800 on FanDuel, obviously a lot of opportunity cost. But if Gobert is out, he's at least a value guy that you can consider. Donovan Mitchell is reasonably priced. I don't really like the matchup for him all that much. Indiana's a slower team as well, just like Utah is. Indiana's a competent team defensively. They've defended the pick and roll well this year, and Mitchell's in the top 5 or top 10 in pick and roll possessions per game. So there's just nothing that stands out from this game that, has a 210 total that I really love in the context of this entire slate.
For sure. I think we can move on, get to the good games. What do you say?
Yep.
Charlotte and Detroit. Another game that I don't know. You and I haven't actually talked prior to the show today. We usually do have a decent idea of where each other stands, but on this game, I'll be curious to see where you're at on both sides. 214 total, 105.5 for the Hornets, 108.5 for the Pistons. I've been very, very hesitant to play Blake Griffin. The price tag keeps coming down. When he was up around 8K, I just had trouble getting there. Now you've got him down at 7K. As I've mentioned many times on this very stream, the the Charlotte Hornets have been battered in the paint, allowing more points in the paint than any other team this season, which is a pretty big deal. Almost 53 points per game in the paint. Not great. They've also just been bad overall around the basket, which you would expect to see with Cody Zeller and the like. What are your thoughts on Griffin and Andre Drummond now that Griffin just specifically on DraftKings is 7K? Andre Drummond is 9,400. Blake Griffin on Yahoo is $29 and Drummond is 48. Your thoughts on Griffin here in a very good matchup against the Hornets?
They're the only two guys that I'm really interested in here, but I do have interest in both. For Blake, 7K on FanDuel as well. So the same salary on FanDuel as on DraftKings is really appealing. He played 32 or 33 minutes 2 games ago, played 31 minutes last game. So we're seeing the minutes go back up. Through his first 5 games of this season, he has a 29.9% usage rate. Since last year, alongside Drummond, he has a 32.2% usage rate. So, maybe we see that go up a little bit as well. He hasn't really looked like himself, but I don't think that's too surprising through his first 5 games. He still averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, and he gets a better matchup here against a weak Charlotte defense. Last game, it was a tough spot against Orlando. He had to deal with Jonathan Isaac individually, which is really tough as well. So even if he's not 100% and he's not like a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy right now, like he has been in the past, I still think that there's some value at his price tag here. And then I really like the matchup for Drummond. His DraftKings salary jumped back up pretty quickly from where it was, but only 9,300 on FanDuel really stands out because it's actually less expensive than DraftKings. You mentioned the points in the paint here, most allowed per game for Charlotte. They have been one of the worst teams at preventing putbacks too. They give up plenty of rebounds. So I think it sets up as a really good matchup for Drummond and Blake. It's just beyond that, there's not a whole lot that I'm interested in.
Right. That's about it for me. I don't see myself getting anywhere else here. Blake has not looked good. He hasn't. But once you get to this price point, it's worth considering him. I still don't think by any means that he is a must play type of power forward option today. But you're good. The games will come. There will be good games. Blake Griffin's still a very good basketball player, and Charlotte's the type of team that can open things up and make that a whole lot easier to produce. Charlotte, on the other hand, talking about them from a DFS standpoint, are you feeling anyone like Graham or Terry Rozier or really anybody on in this starting lineup?
Not really. Detroit's not a good team defensively, but this game shouldn't be that fast paced. Only a 215 total, and it's just when you compare, Graham and Rozier would I think be the two most appealing guys. But when you compare them to other point guards that you have on the slate, whether it's Miami value that opened up without Butler, whether it's Kemba Walker, Malcolm Brogdon on DraftKings specifically, there's just other guys that I would rather get to than these Charlotte guys. Beyond Rozier and Graham, you start to have minutes concerns with Miles Bridges. We've seen some huge games recently, but we've also seen games where he loses some playing time to Batum. Cody Zeller's minutes are all over the place. I would expect him to maybe play a little bit more against Drummond, but he doesn't have to. We've seen Charlotte just be really inconsistent with his minutes. So I really just don't have anything from the Charlotte side.
Nothing at all? Okay.
Nope.
I don't either. But when we get to Brooklyn and Boston, there are a couple of really interesting nuggets here that we can spend some time on. 213.5 total. Celtics are 8-point favorites. 110.8 total for them. 102.8 for the Brooklyn Nets, who will be without DeAndre Jordan today. One thing that stands out to me, and it's having play type data is just really nice. Kemba Walker has been top 10 in pick and roll frequency, pick and roll ball handler frequency every season of his career. I think he's like 12th this year, which is interesting because he's with a new team, but still 43%. The Brooklyn Nets this season have been crushed in the pick and roll by opponents, opposing ball handlers. You look at some of these numbers, and they're allowing the most points in the pick and roll, 25.5 points per game, the most points per possession at 0.98, and one of the highest frequencies as well. Kemba Walker on DraftKings is priced at $6,700. I guess the question is there any type of limitation we would expect? Because $6,700 in this specific matchup is very appealing, whether it be Irving or Spencer Dinwiddie in there, I still think Kemba is in a very favorable spot.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I'm not expecting him to be limited. He said he could have played on Monday, but that they held him out for precautionary reasons. It's not like it was a lower body injury. Basically, it just seems like it was a really scary looking injury that ended up not being a big deal at all. So, he only missed one game. It's not like he missed a week or 2 weeks or something. He should be fine. And I don't really know why they would be looking to limit him, assuming he's healthy enough to play. So the pricing just really doesn't make sense to me. 7,500 on FanDuel, 6,700 on DraftKings. You mentioned how bad Brooklyn's been defending the pick and roll this year. Kemba is normally one of the league leaders in pick and roll possessions per game. This year he's only 15th, but that's still obviously a pretty high mark. He's one of the more efficient pick and roll ball handlers as well. So I think it sets up as a spot where he should do really, really well.
Do you have any interest in the rest of this Boston team now that Kemba Walker's back? I wouldn't say their prices are egregious, right? But they were a whole lot friendlier when Kemba was out, and you say, all right, 6,800 for Jaylen Brown, not bad. Daniel Tice, by the way, will play and I guess be back into the starting lineup. What about the rest of the Celtics squad?
Secondary plays for me. It's still a fast-paced Brooklyn team that isn't great defensively. You still should get 34 to 36 minutes from guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, but not as much usage to go around now without Kemba. They are still missing Hayward, so there is still some increased usage for those guys. But with there being 28 teams playing on the slate and there being teams that are missing some pretty key pieces, none of these guys beside Kemba stand out for me.
Where would you rank or where would you prioritize Kemba at, specifically on DraftKings, where he's, in my opinion, absurdly cheap?
Yeah, he's one of the best plays.
Okay.
I'd definitely be playing Kemba in cash unless we get some really crazy news between now and lock where a ton of other stuff opens. But right now, definitely a cash guy for me. And then one of my tournament priorities as well.
75 on FanDuel, 34 on Yahoo isn't bad either. But
yeah, the only thing that makes it, it's not even like it's difficult to get there. It's still a really good salary. But FanDuel, the Miami guards are just really, really cheap. Dragic, Nunn, Hero's a shooting guard, but from an optimal lineup standpoint, it makes it a little bit tougher to get to Kemba since you can only roster 2 point guards and you have basically 2 free squares coming from Miami.
Okay. The Brooklyn side, Jared Allen this season, pretty impressive campaign so far, man. Only 15% usage, but he's rebounding at a 20% clip, blocking shots at 4.1% clip. These are some solid numbers for him. And he's been someone that can go out there and churn out some pretty sizable double doubles. He's got a 22-17 against Charlotte. No surprise against Charlotte. 22-21 against Cleveland, played 34 minutes. He's now played 32 plus minutes in back-to-back games. DeAndre Jordan sidelined again, but man, that price tag on Jared Allen went from 6,100 up to 7,600 on DraftKings, man. On FanDuel, 7,400 for Jared Allen, and on Yahoo, he's 24, which is easily the most favorable salary if you're looking to target Allen and hope that he gets another 33 or so minutes. But man, that price tag on DraftKings is pretty prohibitive.
Yeah, I think it's pretty site dependent. You mentioned the salary on Yahoo is obviously the most appealing. Then I would say he's not that difficult to play on FanDuel because he's a power forward. He's less expensive than on DraftKings. You don't have the opportunity cost that comes with center. And then DraftKings, he's still an okay play to me if you're assuming he gets 33 to 34 minutes again without DeAndre Jordan, which I'm fine with. And we know that this isn't the same quite the same Boston front court without Al Horford out there like they had in the past. But you still just have so many good center options, whether it's Bam, whether it's paying up a little bit more for a Drummond or an Embiid. There's a lot of options at the center position. So I would say Yahoo's the easiest, then FanDuel, and then DraftKings. It starts to really just become a secondary play.
There's a conversation in our our premium Slack chat talking about how overrated Tim Duncan was. That's one I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I had never seen that.
But hey, here we are. And by the way, it's not everybody. You stick around Awesemo long enough, and you start to see things differently. What about the rest of this Brooklyn team outside of Jared Allen? Kyrie Irving remains out with that ailing shoulder. Karis LeVert remains out. and we know all of this, but I want to set the table a little bit for you. What are we doing with them against a good Boston defense on a 14-game slate? It doesn't feel like you need to prioritize much here.
Nope, nothing really. I mean, obviously, if you're playing 150 lineups and getting to some Dinwiddie or some Torian Prince, there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. They have an increased role without Kyrie. But if you're just trying to break down a slate and talk about the priorities, I don't think that there's anything from Brooklyn that's a huge priority. And if there is, it's Jared Allen on Yahoo and to a lesser extent on FanDuel.
So I'll get to that question when we get to that game, Gerard. I won't forget. Philadelphia, Sacramento. Joel Embiid coming off of a 0-point game. Now, you and I were adamant about how bad this matchup was. Neither of us, I would imagine, saw 0 points coming. Like, just ridiculous how just utterly incompetent he was here. But I got a couple things to run by you, Adam, and then the floor is yours. So you got a 211 total, very low. 110.3 for the Sixers, 100.8 for the Kings. They're 9.5-point dogs at the Wells Fargo Center. The Toronto Raptors allow 0.6 points per possession in post-up situations. The Kings allow 1.09, the highest in the league. This is where Embiid does his work. He got forced out of the paint, sitting around the perimeter, and every time he did drive into the paint or try and back down Marc Gasol, he looked silly. Well, that probably won't be the case today. And I'm not much of a narrative guy, but he probably feels like a total asshole after that last game and needs to do something to salvage his reputation in front of a home crowd. Just saying, man, $9,100 Embiid, telling you right now, the bounce back game for the ages, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I love Embiid here for all the reasons you just said. He goes from as bad a matchup as you're going to get against a Toronto team that's been the most efficient team defending post-ups, that has a veteran in Marc Gasol, to a Sacramento team that's been the least efficient team, to an undersized Rashawn Holmes. You know, Dwayne Dedmon behind him has a reputation as a decent defender, but it's still not someone that I'm concerned about for Embiid, especially because he's very clearly not in favor in Sacramento. So it's just the exact opposite of that matchup against Toronto. Hopefully his ownership's down a bit. And I think it will be, because for one, he's coming off that terrible game. And for two, when you just look at it in terms of roster construction and raw projections, he's not an optimal play, I don't think, because you do have guys like Bam and those cheaper centers that you can go to. So whenever that's the case, it keeps ownership at least somewhat in check. It's a 14-game slate as well. So really no reason for me not to really like Embiid here. The spot is just as good as it was bad last time.
No question, man. Let me just take a look at something here. Yeah, we just got ownership projections. Ownership updates, which, by the way, they're obviously, and you will hear people say this all the time, like they are easily one of our best tools. And by best, I mean just most valuable tools that we have. So we do some free content each day. We open it up so people that want to check out awesemo.com, but haven't done so for one reason or another yet, but want to know what they'd be getting without having to open their wallets yet. Well, we've got the NHL ownership projections are free today, and the NFL lineup builder is as well. You can use that for this Thanksgiving slate. I did a deeper dive with Alex, with Awesemo, and Chris Baggs 11 a.m. this morning. If you're going to be traveling, you're not going to be around, definitely check that out. We break down a full hour spent on this Thanksgiving slate, not only the top plays, but more so we spent a lot of time on the strategies. And the live premium blog is also, Awesemo's live premium blog is available for free at awesemo.com. We're also going to unlock with the likes Awesemo's NBA rank. You get the 750 likes. There's no reason we can't do that. We're going to unlock Alex's or Awesemo's NBA rankings, essentially ranking all the top plays on the slate from best to worst, based on the projection and salary, and the ownership projections also at 1,500 likes. That's a lot of likes, but telling you, this is one of those tools that whether you're MMEing or whether you're playing single entry or 3-max, one of the most helpful tools to understand where the field is going to be and what you should do as a result. Okay, the rest of Sacramento, or the rest of Philadelphia, Adam. We just got into Joel Embiid, same page there. can you find yourself gravitating towards any of these other guys in Simmons or Richardson, whose price is egregiously high in some spots, or Al Horford, Tobias Harris? Is there just an Embiid night, or are we going elsewhere?
Pretty much an Embiid night. I think that Simmons deserves a mention on DraftKings at 7,300 with multi-position eligibility. But still, you compare him to some other guards, it's more of a secondary option. It's not like you'd be upset if you're getting to Harris or Horford or Simmons, but they just grade out nowhere near as good as Embiid does for me. So it's, as far as priorities go, it's Embiid, and then that's about it.
Okay. Now, the Kings, Bogdanovich is probable. He's been basically like questionable every day and then probable in the afternoon. So that wasn't really something to have a whole lot of concerns about. He's played well. A couple tough matchups recently, but aside from that, he's been very solid. Philadelphia doesn't make for the easiest matchup by any stretch. And the Sacramento Kings have one of the lower implied totals on this slate. Looking at the 28 teams that are playing today, Sacramento is coming in with the lowest implied total. That's below the Nets, below the Knicks, below the Cavs. So that says something, Adam.
Yeah, it's a really unappealing spot against a really good Philadelphia defense on the road, missing De'Aaron Fox. I don't think that people watching the show need anyone to tell them that Buddy Hield is capable of playing 40 minutes and making a ton of shots. It's just pretty unlikely in this spot. It's not the kind of matchup where I'm excited to roster Buddy Hield or that I plan to do it. Bogdanovich's price tag is okay. Played about 30 minutes each of the last couple of games. He's really good without Fox. It's just that the salaries come up. And again, you just have so many guys to choose from that I'm not putting any sort of emphasis on prioritizing guys going at Philadelphia in Philly.
Neither am I. I think we can move on from here. Basically an Embiid spot. And then outside of that, maybe secondary options. Even that, I'm not super excited about. But what do you think of this? We just had ownership updated like 5 minutes ago. Embiid's coming in, and it's a 14-game slate. I totally understand you're not going to get a ton of ownership, but 9% on DraftKings, even with the amount of games, is still pretty friendly.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Kind of what I touched on when we talked about it. It's if you just go in and you take, our projections, take whoever's projections, and just hit optimize, you're not going to get a ton of Embiid just popping in there because there's other value that you can get to. But when you start to consider ceilings and how much upside guys have for their price, that's when you start getting to Embiid. So I like that because it means that his ownership should be very reasonable.
Yeah, I think so too. People, if you're talking recency bias, you're probably not stoked about 0 points last time out. But those of us who were away from that, it's our time to jump on now. We can talk about it next time, and hopefully we're all right. Hopefully it makes a difference. But yeah, you point out a couple important things. One of the big things, though, overall is, Yanis, Harden, LeBron, Towns, Davis, Trey Young, Beal, Drummond, Embiid. There's a lot of high-priced guys. You got all but 2 teams on this slate. So you're not going to see any crazy high ownership on the very expensive guys. I think that the most ownership, and tell me if you disagree, by time we get to lock, the heaviest ownership on anyone above like 8K has got to be Paul George.
Yeah, I would say Paul George, and then on the actual expensive guys, I'd be shocked if it's not Anthony Davis.
Okay. Right now we have George at 19% on DraftKings. Anthony Davis at, oh wow, 4.4%.
There have been way, way, way too many people telling me on Twitter today that I'm stupid for not believing in revenge narratives for Anthony Davis to only be 4% owned.
Oh, the revenge narrative. Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, we'll talk about that when we get there. I don't want to get sidetracked because we got a lot to get into, but I'm actually, do me a favor, pull up a few of those while I'm talking at some point so we can read them on, on the live show. Okay. Cleveland, Orlando, not at all expected to be a track meet here. The lowest over-under on the entire slate of 14 games. This is the lowest, 208 total. The Magic are 1-point favorites on the road, 104.5 implied for them, 103.5 implied for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Kevin Love is questionable. He didn't practice yesterday. It says here that he received treatment. Nikola Vucevic, we know he'll be out for some time. And Aaron Gordon is officially out as well. So the starting front court is gone for Orlando. It's been that way for a couple games now. And we don't know what's going on with Kevin Love. He sat last game and Larry Nance played 33 minutes, had another very, very good game. Actually exceeded my expectations. Let's break it down here, starting with Cleveland. Give me the Love does play and Love doesn't play scenarios.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Love does play. I really don't care. Love doesn't play. I still don't really care. But I mean, in seriousness, like it's a really tough spot against Orlando. Even without Vooch and Gordon, it's still a capable defensive team. They're slow. They're actually playing at the slowest pace in the league this year. It's just not a very appealing spot. Kevin Love wouldn't be a priority if he's in. If he's out, I expect that Larry Nance starts and plays 33, 34 minutes. He averages slightly under a fantasy point per minute because you have to keep in mind most of his minutes are coming alongside Tristan Thompson and not coming at the 5 where he's more productive. His salaries come up to where he would not be a priority for me. Tristan Thompson's numbers are better without Love. He would probably be the most appealing Cleveland option, but again, I would put him behind a lot of other center options on this slate. So I'm not overly concerned with the Love news just because I don't think I get too much Cleveland one way or the other.
Okay. Fair enough point. Kevin Love's price tag isn't bad, but you could say the same about a lot of players. Basically the same sentiment you and I had on Monday, where it's like, hey, this guy's okay, but half of these guys are $1,000 cheaper than they should be. And it's going to make it difficult. On the Orlando side, is there anything here that stands out as value? Vooch and Gordon now have been out for more than a game, but DK preemptively priced a lot of these guys up anyway. Just for the sake of making sure we hit on everything with this Orlando team, just go ahead and break down a little bit what this rotation looked like last game against the Detroit Pistons, a game that towards the end got out of control, but was competitive enough for us to get a very good idea of what things should look like tonight with Vooch and Aaron Gordon out again.
So the first thing that you would start at without Vooch is the center rotation, which was the second game in a row where you saw 48 minutes between Kem Birch and Mo Bamba. So even though Orlando probably should be giving Jonathan Isaac minutes at the 5, even though Steve Clifford had said that that was something that he would consider, we're not getting that yet. So I think that you should be projecting about 27 minutes to Birch, about 21 for Bamba. Bamba played really well, particularly in the first half of that game. Still only played about 20 and a half minutes. Birch played the rest, the other 27 and a half. Birch is 4,200 on DraftKings and FanDuel. I think that on FanDuel, that makes him an okay value. He's been really, really, really unproductive this year. Last year, he averaged about 0.9 fantasy points per minute. So I think that you should see him at least start to be a little bit more productive going forward. I think that Bamba is okay, but with 14 games, a guy that I'm projecting for 21 minutes isn't going to get many lineups. And then Jonathan Isaac, I think, gets a nice bump without Vooch and without Gordon, even though he's not getting those minutes at the 5 that we would like. 21.9% usage rate this year without them on the floor, 15.1% rebounding percentage. You mentioned all the time how he racks up blocks and steals as well. 7,500 on DraftKings, so his salary came down a little bit. $8,000 on FanDuel is still a decent price point. Even though it's not as good a play, I don't think, as it was the last time Orlando played. And then beyond that, you just get probably around 32 to 34 minutes from Fournier, who has a 27% usage rate, but doesn't contribute a bunch in the way of peripherals without Vooch or Gordon. Fultz has a 24.4% usage rate without them, but his price tags come up a bit. Still just not the most appealing game in terms of pace either, only a 208 total. So even though Cleveland's not very good defensively, there's no real priority plays for me from Orlando.
Okay. Pretty solid breakdown there. Do you want to keep going with this one? Anything else we've missed, or should we talk Toronto, New York?
I guess just because there's been a lot of teams where I've said just like I'm not interested at all. I don't feel quite that way with Orlando. It's just more of a team where I like the idea of kind of mixing one of their guys into some tournament lineups because it is a favorable matchup in terms of defense. It's just not one of those games where I expect there to be tons of possessions and like 3 guys from Orlando to all just crush. So like if you're getting low owned value and using like a Markelle Fultz or a Terrence Ross, I think that's fine. It's just that it's not overall a super appealing team.
So let's say this much then. You're playing one lineup, right, on DraftKings, But in that lineup, you have to play 2 Orlando Magic. Would it be Fultz and Russ? Who would it be?
It would, depending on salary, like Isaac would be the one that I want the most, but obviously he's the toughest to get to. I think that Ross, Fournier, Fultz, one of those guys would be the second guy.
Okay. So yeah, you don't hate him like you do a Charlotte Hornets, is what you're saying,
right? Like I think there's probably one guy on Orlando tonight where it's just like, yeah, I wish I had that guy in more lineups. Whereas like the Kings, I not really concerned at all about not having Kings.
Toronto, New York. Before we do though, we have fact-based evidence from the YouTube chat proving that revenge is real. Gustavo Finkelstein just said, hey, I played my old softball team last week, went yard twice, 2 dingers and 9 RBIs. Revenge is real.
You should try harder against other teams.
What's that?
I said he should try harder against other teams.
Well, how do we know he doesn't have 2 home runs and 9 RBIs every game?
True. I feel like that's something that he would have let us know.
Yeah, you would think so. That's something to brag about.
Yeah.
Toronto, New York. 212.5 total. Knicks 101.25, 111.3 implied for the Raptors. Raptors 10-point favorites here. No surprise there. Kyle Lowry appears to be targeting a return soon, December 1st, but remains out today. Outside of that, Serge Ibaka also doubtful to play in this one. And that's about all we have for Toronto. On the New York Knicks side, RJ Barrett was questionable at one. I believe he's probable. No, he's active. So nothing to worry about there. That's really all we've got. Toronto against the New York Knicks. You're starting to see prices on guys like Van Vliet start to rise a little bit. Even Rondé Hollis Jefferson's up there above the 5K mark coming off a strong game against Philly. So many of these guys are going to cost quite a bit. Pascal Siakam, $8,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Siakam's $9,600. And on Yahoo, he's $45. In comparison, that's the same prices like guys like Trey Young and Bradley Beal. What are your thoughts on Toronto today?
I think that Siakam and Van Vliet are still pretty strong secondary options. I say secondary just because they're not like top guys at their positions for me, but you know that in competitive games, you're just still getting a ton of minutes from them. Van Vliet's averaged 38.7 minutes per game since Kyle Lowry's injury. Siakam is up above 38 minutes as well. You're seeing 40 plus minutes from him in competitive games. His usage is actually down, Siakam that is, in the games since Lowry's injury, but I still think a lot of that probably has to do with he just hasn't been shooting it well. So I'm still treating it like his average usage rate would be the 29% or so that you've seen for the entire season. Van Vliet's salary is not as high as Siakam's. Siakam's up over 9K on FanDuel, 8,900 on DraftKings, whereas you have Van Vliet at 7,900 and I think 8K flat on FanDuel. It's just a lot of minutes for these guys, especially Van Vliet, to where it gives you a pretty high floor and obviously the opportunity for a nice ceiling too if you're going to play 38 to 40 minutes in a competitive game.
Can you find anything of value with the New York Knicks?
Julius Randle's cheap. I still am not prioritizing him. The matchup sucks. The position's good. Yeah.
That's about it.
Yep.
All right. No news yet. Still waiting on something to roll in. 7 p.m. lock. And you have Josh Engelman and Eddie Fear that are taking you up to lock anyway. So they'll be able to cover all of that when the news rolls in. And we roll on. Houston, Miami. I got to tell you, man, this is a very, very unappealing spot for James Harden for a couple of reasons. Maybe we have differing opinions here, but we can break that down. Not because he's expensive. By the way, 227 total here. Rockets are 8-point favorites, 109.5 total. 117.8, 109.5 for Miami. It's just a couple of things that stood out to me. No one's allowing a lower 3-point percentage than Miami this season to their opponents. And no one's allowing, not nobody, but the Miami Heat are allowing some of the fewest points in isolation where James Harden seems to lead the league every single year. He's, of course, capable of putting up monster numbers in any matchup. I'm not disputing that even a little bit. But at this price point, I would definitely feel better with a matchup that wasn't so unappealing. I mean, 0.84 points per possession to opposing players in isolation, 31% 3-point shooting. These are two spots where James Harden excels and Miami excels defensively. So something's got to give.
Yeah, it's a really good Miami team defensively. Jimmy Butler probably not playing doesn't help, but
That's a
to
good
me,
point.
to me though, it really just comes down to there's not a ton, at least right now, of cheap value on this slate. Harden's really expensive, and there is a ton of mid range value because of just guys being mispriced coming back from injury, particularly on DraftKings, or just some other guys being out and prices not adjusting quick enough. So I think that it's kind of tough to get the Harden. I think it'll be easier to get there on FanDuel because he's relatively less expensive than he is on DraftKings, and also you have, like, for example, Frank Kaminsky is $4,000 on FanDuel, so you do have a little bit more of that really cheap value there. But it's just not a great matchup for him. You have Yanis in a great matchup. Obviously, there are other concerns there with blowouts and everything, but Giannis in a great matchup, Davis in a great matchup, LeBron in a great matchup. I'm not anticipating getting to tons of Harden, even though obviously he has as high a ceiling as just about anyone.
Yeah, I have a very tough time saying, well, Giannis is very expensive, but I definitely am willing, if I'm paying all the way up, I'd prefer him over Harden on DraftKings. But you did mention on FanDuel, Giannis is what, $1,100 more than James Harden, so that's at least significant. What are you doing with the rest of the Houston Rockets? Russell Westbrook is $8,800 on DraftKings. He's really come back down to earth after a real fast start to the season where we saw James Harden struggling in all aspects of the game. But Westbrook's 8,600 on FanDuel, and on Yahoo, he's 42. FanDuel definitely appealing, but again, a good Miami defense. Justice Winslow returns to the mix tonight. Do you have any interest in Houston in a game that has a 227 total? And by the way, Clint Capella is questionable to play, so that's another piece of news we're waiting on.
If Capella's out, it makes Westbrook a lot more appealing because his rebound numbers should increase.
Yeah.
It's still, I mean, it's tough. We've just talked about how many guards there are that are kind of in that mid range. Kemba, Brogdon on DraftKings, all of the Miami guys that we'll get to on the other side of this game. So we know Westbrook has that 55 to 60 point upside, but it's still not a really appealing game or a really appealing matchup. If Capella's in, you expect the rebounding numbers not to be great for Westbrook. So still more of a secondary option for me. And the same goes for Capella, where I think that his rebounding numbers have been absolutely amazing this year. And that's, really good to see. It's not like it's a terrible matchup in that regard here against Bam in the Miami front court, but you still have Embiid, you still have Drummond, you still have Bam on the other side of this game, who I love in the spot. So I think that getting to guys like Harden, Westbrook, and Capella in tournaments is fine, but they're just not guys that I'm gonna have tons of exposure to.
Okay. Now Miami on the other side faces a Houston team. This is where it begins to get a little bit interesting because the Houston Rockets, are one of the worst teams in transition scoring allowed, which makes sense based on the way they play. That's just one small piece of the puzzle, but they also play at an elevated pace, second fastest pace in the entire league. Defensively, they've been average, 18th in defensive rating, and Miami plays at has the third best defensive rating and plays at a middle of the road 16th pace, 101 possessions per 48. So definitely a pace up spot and a pretty good matchup for Miami. And Jimmy Butler is unlikely to play. Is this going to put you on Kendrick Nunn, Goran Dragic, assuming more ball handling responsibilities are filtered through those guys? What are you doing here with Miami?
Yeah, I think that they become one of the most appealing teams as a whole on this slate because
Kevin
of how
Love
fast,
is active, by the way. Go ahead.
Because of how fast Houston plays. When you lose Butler, you obviously lose usage, you lose assists. We still don't have a huge sample of Winslow on and Butler off this year because it just kind of seems like Butler's been in most of the year, Winslow's been out, and then when Winslow comes back, Butler goes out. But without Butler on the floor this season, Tyler Hero's averaged 0.78 points per minute. Dragic is at 1.16. Kendrick Nunn's at 1.06. It opens up minutes for those guys too. I have Kendrick Nunn at 36 minutes. I have Dragic at 28. I have Hero at 32. I think that you could get, maybe 30 for Hero, 30 for Dragic. Those minutes can fluctuate a bit, but that all three of those guys should be playing enough to be strong options here. Winslow, still kind of waiting on news on what his minutes are going to look like. Spoelstra yesterday said that he expected Winslow to play, but that he didn't think he would play a lot. I have absolutely no idea what that means. I don't know if that changes with Jimmy Butler not playing. I have him at 26 minutes right now. I'm hoping we get some kind of update on what exactly that means. If Winslow were to be in with no restrictions, then I think he's a great option too. If he is going to be restricted, then obviously it is tough to get there.
Okay, top plays for Miami.
Bam's the top guy. I didn't mention him because I talked about the backcourt, but
sure, yeah.
He's playing big minutes, with or without Butler, so it doesn't affect his minutes. But without Butler on the floor this season, Bam's averaged 1.38 DraftKings points per minute in 147 minutes. He has a 22% usage rate. His assist percentage is up at 26.1%. And then you consider the type of player he is too and how athletic he is. It's not like he should struggle because of the pace of this game. It just gives him more possessions, gives him more rebounding opportunities. And he's inexpensive at 7,500 on DraftKings. He's a power forward on FanDuel, which is really good. So Bam's a priority for me today. And then behind him, it's Kendrick Nunn, Dragic, Hero.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I have this one ranked too. Circling back just for a quick moment, Cody Zeller was just ruled out. Does that do anything for you today?
Yeah, but I don't know what.
Yeah, that's the thing. Wasn't he? I swear he was probable.
He was probable.
What?
I thought he was probable too.
Yeah.
So I think it means Andre Drummond gets 38 rebounds.
Bismack Biyombo will get the spot start.
Are you asking me or is that news?
No, I'm telling you.
Yeah. So he's 4K on DraftKings. I don't really want to waste my center spot on FanDuel on Biyombo. I would imagine he plays as much as he can. Like the alternatives are giving Marvin Williams minutes against Andre Drummond or giving Guillermo Hernan-Gomez minutes against Andre Drummond. I don't think either of those are things that they're going to want to do. So
it's tough though, because he's a 6'8" center.
Right. He's not big, but he at least can hold his own. Whereas Hernan-Gomez is not going to hold his own and Marvin Williams is not going to do anything. Yeah, like I don't expect any of them to slow down Drummond. I just expect that Biyombo probably gives them the best chance.
Yeah, and Cody Zeller, I believe, missed a couple games earlier in the year.
Yeah, he did.
I don't remember how many it was though, and I know Biyombo started, but by as many minutes, I don't feel comfortable projecting him for more than 23. You're all right giving him more than that because of the matchup?
I mean, I was thinking 26.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean,
not enough to where I'm really looking to roster him, I don't think.
I'm with you. James Borrego, sometimes it just seems like he doesn't care about, who you're going up against. Not that he shouldn't, but sometimes it feels like he's running guys out there. If he doesn't like what he sees, regardless of matchup, you're gone, and then you might not come back. So yeah, I don't know how many minutes I would expect for him, and it's really not a great matchup either. If it was, I have a different opinion here. Before we move on from Houston and Miami, I just want to circle back because this is one of the higher total games on the slate, and the Jimmy Butler news is big. It's still pending. We don't have confirmation yet, but he's doubtful to play. Anything else you want to touch on with Houston and Miami?
So one more thing I wanted to mention with Biyombo. He started against Karl Anthony Towns without Zeller earlier this year. The game blew out, but he played 13 first half minutes, finished at 17 and a half, but that would, put him on pace for those 26 also. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I agree with you that the minutes are really volatile there. Borrego can kind of do whatever he wants because I don't think anyone's going to actually slow Drummond down.
Right.
But yeah, going back to the Miami side, I think that their pricing overall is more appealing on FanDuel than on DraftKings because Tyler Hero is 4,900 on FanDuel, so he's 200 less than he is on DraftKings. Dragic is, I think, 500 less on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, and Kendrick Nunn's 100 more on FanDuel. So really, really easy to get to them on FanDuel. Like my optimal lineup on FanDuel has 4 guys from Miami. On DraftKings, I think that those guys are all still good plays, but that the pricing is at least a little bit tighter.
All right. So Memphis and the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard has already been ruled out. Big news. getting some rest here on the second game of a back-to-back, which means that Paul George is going to be one of the more popular plays, especially one of the most popular plays at his not at his position, at a top price point. That is by the way, now Kevin Love's a game time decision. So I don't know, dude. Like you said, kind of easy. Just don't worry about it. But yeah, Paul George, I'm going to let you break down his on-offs with Kawhi. I'm sure you got him pulled up. You wrote the deep dive today. He's been excellent this season in his limited time in the 7 games that he's played, and now he's going to have a game. It is a back-to-back, but he only played 29 minutes yesterday without Kawhi Leonard against the Memphis squad that really does nothing to concern anybody. Actually plays at the 6th fastest pace in the league and has a defense that ranks 24th in defensive rating this season. Floor is yours.
Yeah, fast-paced Memphis team that doesn't play defense for a guy in Paul George who has played 110 minutes without Kawhi on the floor this season. He's averaged 1.77 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 39.3% usage rate, 27.7% assist percentage. On one hand, it's only 110 minutes, and for most people, a 39% usage rate isn't sustainable. But go back and look at what Kawhi was doing without Paul George this year, and think about who's in this starting unit when you don't have Lou Williams or Harrell on the floor. It's Pat Beverly, Mo Harkless, Zubats playing alongside Paul George. So there's no real reason that he can't go out there and just chuck up shots the entire time he's on the floor. It's a good matchup. The price tag is basically correct or even a little bit cheap for when Kawhi is in. So taking Kawhi out just makes him one of the, I think, most obvious values on the slate, even though he's not, a quote unquote value play.
By the way, I mentioned that Butler was doubtful. I see 2 spots that he's doubtful, and then I see Ira Winderman saying that he's out. Is he confirmed out?
I saw earlier, I haven't seen anything updated, but earlier I saw he's out, and then like 2 minutes later I saw he's doubtful, not expected to play. So
that's what I saw as well. So yeah, I don't know, but just keep an eye on it. Anyway, we break down Paul George, and now you get to the likes of Lou Williams, 6,900. I mentioned this yesterday. Like, the guy's going to get minutes, man. Lou Williams is going to play minutes off the bench. I think that might have been a little bit more than he would normally see, but still, I think you could give him another 32. There's kind of been caution thrown to the wind with him this season. What is he in, like his 17th year, and he's still getting a ton of run. Montrezl Harrell coming off a very disappointing game, played 28 minutes, 24 fantasy points. But let's talk a little bit about Lou Williams here. I believe Pat Bev was in foul trouble, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So why do you say it like that?
Because I had tons of Pat Bev yesterday, and he started out really well, and I was like, oh wow, this is gonna work. And then he just kept fouling. I
had a hockey game, and when I went into my game, I looked, and Pat Bev had 3 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 assists and a steal in the first quarter. And I was like, oh, nice. Get out of hockey. I'm going to take a look. Pat Bev on his way to a solid game. I think he added 1 block, and that was it.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing for me. Like, I opened the app, and he had like 14 and a quarter DraftKings points in the first quarter. And I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, he's doing really well. This should be good. Then he stat corrected down to like 12, and then he got in foul trouble. And I think in the third quarter, he had less points than he had in the first quarter.
All right.
But
man, Christian Lemons, thanks, brother. That is huge. $100 super chat, Adam.
That's awesome.
He says, thanks for the help in completely changing how I approach DFS. I've made enough in the last month to cover my entire last 5 years of playing like a sheep. Think about that. That's insane.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That is so cool to hear it, man. Yeah. Congratulations. Deeper dive. If you want to sign up, you can be like Christian. No, in all seriousness, if you want to get 50% off your first month, use the sign up code Deeper Dive. Go to awesomemode.com/join and check out all we have to offer. And also $3.95 per week if you wanted to get the Express Pass. But again, man, that's great. Congrats on all your success, and thanks a lot for that. We really appreciate you. What outside of Paul George can we look at here? Once again, top 6 pace team in Memphis, bottom 6 defensive team. Memphis, there's this, you look at Memphis, and for years, ever since DFS became a thing, Memphis has been an awful team to target. For the first time in like 7 years, that's not the case.
No, I mean, I'm going right back to Lou Williams. I'm going to Harrell. We hadn't seen Leonard and George really being staggered anyway, so that's why you're still seeing usage for Williams and Harrell. But since Paul George's return without Leonard on the floor, 158 minutes for Williams, 143 for Harrell, 30.8% usage for Williams, 28.4 for Harrell. Obviously, both of those numbers are really, really good. Williams has averaged 1.29 DraftKings points per minute. Harrell's at 1.41. Not a matchup that I'm concerned about for either guy. Did you say you have Williams at 32 minutes?
I had him at 32 yesterday. I'm putting him back at 32 today. Yeah.
Okay, I had 34 today just because of Leonard being out. But either way, like even in 32 minutes, I think tons of Williams, tons of Harrell for me as well.
Okay. Yeah, the back-to-back put it a little lower, but it doesn't, for me, it might not mean a thing, but I still like him at this price point. Top options for the Clippers, would you say it would be in this specific order: Paul George, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell?
That's exactly what I'd say.
All right. Memphis.
So if you're playing like 150 lineups in large field tournaments, obviously not in the same category as George, Williams, and Harrell, but Zubats has been incredibly productive without Kawhi on the floor. He's only played 63 minutes since George came back without Kawhi, and he's averaged 1.45 points per minute. But even since the start of the season, his production has been better, as you would expect. So I think that not a huge priority at all, especially since he's a center, but he's a piece of the Clippers team that could just kind of have a better game than people are expecting.
John Morant, questionable. We still don't have word yet. So basically, following the shoot around, there were just concerns that both of these guys weren't exactly there yet. I don't know if he plays. It's not a great matchup anyway. He has been seeing more minutes, which is nice. But outside of that, I think John Morant is too expensive here on a 14-game slate, even if he plays. Memphis in general, not a team I have a lot of love for. What about you?
Yeah, I think that Morant, especially in this spot, I think he's a good play. Like, he's not that expensive. He's $7K on DraftKings. He's, I think, $8K on FanDuel. He's playing more minutes. He has a 30% usage rate, 36% assist percentage. Obviously, it's a good Clippers defensive team, but he's the only guy that I'd really be interested in from Memphis if he plays. But where I think it makes an even bigger difference is if he sits, you get $3,200 Tyus Jones on DraftKings. You get what I'm sure is a really cheap Tyus Jones on the other sites as well. So that's John Moran, I think, is the piece of news that I'm waiting on, that I'm most interested in getting before lock, because it would actually completely change my lineups.
Okay, and just again, what would you be doing in the event that he's out? Because if it's that big of a piece, I want to make sure we hit on it.
Playing tons and tons and tons of Tyus Jones.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see how you couldn't, right?
Tyus Jones, he's 36 on FanDuel, he's 32 on DraftKings. It's not like we're getting a $4,500 guy where we still need 35 points to be really glad that we played him. It's just a easy piece of value. It makes it easier to get to those guys like Harden, like Davis, like LeBron, like Yanis. So yeah, it would just be huge news if Morant sits.
What do you think? 28, 30 minutes?
Yeah, I would say at least like 30. I don't remember what game it was he sat the other day. Morant, that is.
When Tyus played 28?
Okay, is that what it was?
It may have been. I'm just looking quickly. Cursory look. I don't remember exactly when it was.
It was the 9th against Dallas.
Yeah, so 28 minutes for Tyus Jones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess we'll see. But it wouldn't even matter. Like, project him at 28, you're still going to get a boatload of Tyus Jones. So
right, and he lost 3 minutes to blow out there too, so it would have been like 30, 31.
Okay, makes sense. Carr Sampson's out. Change your lineups.
Yeah, huge news.
Change your lineups, man. You got time. Milwaukee and Atlanta. Yanis Antetokounmpo. Just an absolute beast in transition. Atlanta's been terrible in transition defense. Giannis in the paint against this front court is going to ravage them. It all comes down to the price point, because if everyone was priced the same on a 15-game slate, everyone in the league's playing. Yeah, and they have these same matchups as tonight. Giannis is the first guy in my lineup.
Yeah, he's averaging 1.97 DraftKings points per minute this year.
It's absurd. Draymond Green is now probable, but the problem is not everyone is priced the same, and Giannis is very expensive. He's 12-4 on DraftKings. He's 12-7 on FanDuel, rightfully so. 58, same. This is where it's interesting. Same price tag as James Harden on Yahoo. For me, that's not even a question. If you're trying to get to one of those guys, what are we doing with Giannis and the Bucks?
I'm happy with any Giannis I get to. Obviously, with it being a 14-game slate, and right now there not being a ton of really cheap value, it kind of limits it. There is blowout risk here. I don't think there's any denying that. But at the same time, you do have a 127 team total for Milwaukee, which is the highest on the slate. You're just obviously hoping that Atlanta stays in this game. But still, Giannis is averaging 32 minutes per game this year, and he's averaging 64 DraftKings points per game. So when you have someone that's averaging about 2 minute or 2 fantasy points per minute, even if they lose some minutes, it's not the biggest deal in the world. And obviously, Atlanta is a reasonably fast-paced team. They're a terrible defense. You could see Giannis go for 80 points in 28 minutes or something like that. So even with the blowout risk and all that, the upside's still there. It's just that there are a lot of other options. You have LeBron, for example, on FanDuel is 1,500 less than Giannis is at small forward. You have Paul George there. So I would say that Giannis isn't as big a priority for me today as he would be on a lot of other slates, just because of his pricing, just because of how many other options there are. But I'm obviously more than happy to get Giannis in, as many lineups as I can get him in.
All right. So Giannis being as pricey as he is, yeah, in terms of prioritizing him, it's a little difficult, but if you can get to Giannis here, I am never going to convince anyone not to play him against Atlanta. On the same squad, though, Eric Bledsoe, Chris Middleton is active tonight, and this is his first game in almost 3 weeks, so that's significant, and it definitely affects Eric Bledsoe. It takes me off of most of this Milwaukee team, but and by the way, you last year this would have been a massive pace up spot for the Milwaukee Bucks. This year they lead the league in pace. It's actually a relatively significant pace down spot for them, but most opponents are.
Yeah, and I think that it's worth noting that Atlanta's playing a bit faster recently than they were earlier in the season. Like the first week or two of the season, they were one of the slowest teams. Now they're up to 11th or 12th in pace, and they're really, really bad defensively. One guy I would point out is Eric Bledsoe, because with George Hill doubtful, I think you could see an extra couple of minutes for Bledsoe. He lost minutes too. I think it was a blowout or foul trouble last game, but I have him at 30 minutes here, and he's still averaged about 1.2 DraftKings points per minute with Middleton on the floor this year. Overall, he has a 26% usage rate, 28% assist percentage. It's just that Milwaukee should score so many points today. It's tough to get to Giannis, but I like the idea of getting to some piece of this team. I think Bledsoe's a really good spot to get to, especially because his ownership should be held in check by the popular other guards in Rubio and Kemba and the Miami guys.
I mean, you got a 239 total, 126.8 implied for the Bucks. So when you hear Adam say, "Yeah, I'd like to get a piece of this," well, it's a 126.8 total here. They're 14.5-point favorites. Just massive implied total here. The highest on the slate by 3 points, and that's on a 14-game slate. I mean, shit, dude. I don't know how you don't want something here. I'm gonna try and get some Giannis in the lineup just because it is a smash spot. If you're worried about blowouts, well, things happen, and games that should blow out don't. Games that shouldn't blow out do.
Yeah, and here's my point with the ownership on Bledsoe. Like looking at DraftKings ownership projections, Malcolm Brogdon is $6,800, Bledsoe $7,100. Brogdon, great play, whatever. But he's facing Utah. He's projected for 15% ownership. Bledsoe has half the ownership on a team that has a 126.5 total. I like the idea of pivoting to Bledsoe there.
Okay, Bledsoe, your favorite practical play on the Bucks?
Yeah.
All right. Rudy Gobert now, game time decision. Here's the good news. That is a 7 p.m. game. It's in India, not Utah. So we will have, we should know, and that's good to know.
The only news that we're waiting on that isn't at 7 that we know of right now is the Morant news, right?
That's it.
Oh, yeah. And Capella, I guess.
All right. So looking at Hold on a second. Let me calm down. Oh, God. Looking at the Atlanta side of the ball. Go ahead for a second. Start talking about Atlanta.
Okay. So Trey Young, I think, is a really interesting tournament option, especially if you are getting to Yanis, because he's obviously the most likely reason that Atlanta stays in this game. I wrote a pretty decent amount about Trey Young in today's deep dive, and it wasn't because I think he's a core play or, one of the most likely options to succeed, but it was because his game matches up with Milwaukee's defense in a way where it basically they should be daring him. They should be giving him a lot of opportunities. It's unlikely he's efficient, but they have allowed a ton of pick and roll possessions this year. Trey Young leads the league in pick and roll possessions. They've been one of the most efficient teams defending the pick and roll. So it's unlikely he has a ton of success there, but it's good to at least see that from a schematic standpoint, they're not taking it away. They've allowed the most 3-point attempts per game. They've been the 8th best team in terms of 3-point percentage allowed. So it's not like they're giving up a ton of made threes. They're just a really good defensive team. But you talk about a league leader in pick and roll possessions for Young, the 9th most 3-point attempts per game, facing a team that gives up a ton of, or allows a ton of opportunities in the pick and roll and to 3-point shooters. And he should at least be getting those opportunities. And we know that he's capable of making his shots from anywhere on the floor. He can be impossible to defend at times. So he at least has a really high upside, even if it's pretty unlikely that he gets there. But he does, I think, positively correlate with those guys like Bledsoe, like Yanis, because if Young were to go out there and just have one of these 45 real point games where he scores like 70 fantasy points, there's a really good chance that you're getting those 34, 36 minutes out of Yanis instead of 28 to 30.
Okay. Top plays from this game.
Yanis, Bledsoe, Young.
Okay. We've got how many to go? God, we still got 5 to go. This is one big fucking slate. San Antonio and Minnesota Spurs, 3-point favorites, 116.3 total, 113.3 for the Minnesota Timberwolves, 229.5. Man, times have changed. Imagine seeing a 230 almost over under for a Spurs game at any point over the past couple of years. It just didn't happen, but here we are. What's fascinating about this game, Adam, is it's a 230 implied total, but with 14 games on this slate, a lot of these guys normally would be really, really appealing. And many of them you could argue still are, but do you look at this game and say, I really, really like multiple guys from both sides? Like Derek White is cheap, probably gets a good amount of run here. There's a couple players we can discuss, but do you see both sides and say, I really like this?
No, I was going to say that not only when was the last time you saw a 230 total with the Spurs, but imagine a couple years ago seeing a 230 total at all and being like, yeah, I don't really care.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
But to be clear, like it's not that I don't think there's going to be a lot of fantasy points in this game. It's that there's not really pieces from this game that jump out to me as top options at their position, which
me too.
On one hand, it means that they're going to be low owned, which is nice. Obviously it's a really fast-paced matchup for DeRozan, for Aldridge. Beyond that, you start to get minutes concerns with guys like Murray, White, Pirtle, Gay. But for at least DeRozan and Aldridge, they should have a lot of opportunities. It's just that I can name a handful of guys at their positions that I like a little bit better. But I would say that if you are just kind of looking for contrarian tournament plays, DeRozan and Aldridge would be the two guys for me from San Antonio that I'm most interested in.
Okay. Right now, from an ownership standpoint, you have pull it up here. Is somebody like Derek White, $4,400 on DraftKings, no ownership at all. Are you okay going to him for value? Let's say John Moran plays and there isn't a ton of value, but you have someone like Yanis in your lineup, or you're playing 2 10K guys, 2 9K guys. Do you find yourself, would you be all right with Derek White at 44? I know you might only get 26, 28 minutes from him, but it is an up-tempo game with 2 bad defenses. Any interest there as a value?
I mean, in the situation you described, I'd be okay with it. Like I have him as a pretty neutral play on DraftKings, not someone that I'd be getting into my single entry or my 3 max. But If across 150 lineups I used him as value, I'd be fine with that just because of the matchup.
Right. That's how I feel about it. Normally, I wouldn't be really enthusiastic, but when you know how here's how I see it. Like you said, the matchup. If it's a 230 total, and there isn't a ton of good value, even on a 14 game slate, I think there could be a lot more. I don't mind pulling risky, kind of volatile value from a game that has a 230 total. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those where, like, if I had a lineup doing well and I pulled it up and I look at it and I have Derek White, I'm not like, oh, sweet, I still have Derek White to go, but I'm also not like scrambling to my computer to find a better option.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like Towns at 10-3. I'll put it to you this way: where you have Towns at 10-3, you have Joel Embiid on DraftKings at 9,100, Anthony Davis at 10 flat, Drummond at 94. Where is Towns rank among those guys?
Behind them, when you factor in the salary, I think again it's a perfectly fine spot for him. He should play big minutes. We know he's going to lead the team or be up there with Wiggins at least in usage and assist percentage and rebounding percentage. But he's just more expensive than Embiid. He's more expensive than Drummond. I don't think that the ceilings are all that different between those guys, and that's without talking about Bam, Whiteside, Capella, any of those guys. So kind of casualty of the slate for me, I think.
Okay. That is your phrase. You use it well. Phoenix, Washington. Highest total. Just astronomical total here. 240, even higher than Milwaukee and Atlanta. Suns are 7.5 point favorites, 123.8 total. Again, imagine I told you that we'd see totals at 124 for the Suns this year. Like, times have changed. 116.3 for the Wizards. You and I talked about offensive ratings last night, and I had mentioned how the Mavs are highest in the league by a wide margin, and you said, yeah, and the Wizards are second, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, this should be a really appealing game. Phoenix, not the defensive juggernaut that Denver is, not the incredibly slow team that Denver is either. So you have the Wizards coming off of a pretty predictably poor outing last game, but now you get a nice bounce back spot here against Phoenix. So I think that Bradley Beal is in a much better spot than he was yesterday, playing 38 plus minutes in competitive games since Isaiah Thomas joined the starting lineup. 29.8% usage, 28.6%. What'd you say?
Isaiah Thomas was great yesterday.
Yeah, he's terrible. 28.6% usage for Beal. He's averaging about 1.3 points per minute. So he's decent in the context of the slate. Thomas Bryant, I think, is still really underpriced. Got in some foul trouble against Jokic yesterday. Not as concerning going against Frank Kaminsky tonight. Still pretty cheap. Should play somewhere 28 to 30 minute range, I would expect. Beyond that, you get into kind of some question marks, but I think one guy to really point out the price tag is that Rui's 4,300 on DraftKings. His minutes are volatile. He loses minutes in the closing lineup, like we talked about, to Davis Bertans. He potentially could lose minutes to some other guys as well. But I think that when you get to that price point in a game that should have as many possessions and as much scoring as this one, that he might be going a little bit overlooked.
All right. Tab Jones, who does Laffy keep looking at? Now, I got a monitor up here. I have two different computers, so I'm not tweaking. So I said Laffy's tweaking. Nah, bro, I'm not tweaking. I'd be a whole lot different than that if that was the case. Certainly wouldn't be composing myself, I can tell you that much. So with Bradley Beal at his price point, 96 on DraftKings, and FanDuel, he's coming in at, what is he, 95, and on Yahoo, Brad Beal is 44. Can you prioritize him?
In terms, like, he wouldn't be in a cash lineup for me right now.
So if you had 20% in tournaments on DraftKings, would you be okay with that? Or would you say, man, I got to reconfigure something?
No, I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Okay.
Like, if as high as I think Trey Young's ceiling is, if you told me I could only play one of Beal or Young, I would side with Beal.
Okay. I would too.
Especially if it wasn't like a Yanis lineup.
The rest of Washington, how about them? Like you said, it's a very difficult matchup last night, or it was a very difficult matchup against Denver. Thomas Bryant was okay, given the context of that slate. He was all right, nothing crazy. He's been a jack of all trades this year, and he proved that again with 2 steals, 2 blocks, 2 assists to go along with 10 points and 8 rebounds. Now he goes up against Phoenix, and Frank Kaminsky led front court there, so that's fun. But he's at a price that is just more so reasonable than favorable. Isaiah Thomas played 22 minutes and was outright atrocious, 1 for 8 shooting, finished with 4 fantasy points. Really doesn't get worse than that. He had as many turnovers as he had points, more turnovers than assists. And then really the rest of this rotation, we've seen Scott Brooks take a different approach to it lately. Bertans continues to get run, but certain guys like Troy Brown's minutes have been kind of all over the place. Jordan McRae is another one coming off a good game, 24 minutes against Denver. What are you doing here with non-Beal players?
Yeah, just some guys that I don't mind, mixing in. I talked about Rui being really cheap. Thomas Bryant is my second favorite player from Washington. CJ Miles is ruled out, which I don't think.
Clint Capella was just ruled out.
Awesome. So that makes Westbrook better. It gives Hartenstein and Chandler minutes, but I don't expect that to really matter.
Okay, so favors Westbrook based on the rebounding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to say, I don't want to downplay the effect this has on Bam Adebayo either. Capella is a good player and a good enough defender, so I think this helps him as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you there. CJ Miles ruled out for Washington, played 21 minutes last night, including the blowout run, played 6 minutes the game before that. So I don't think it has to have an impact, but I think that it does at least make it a little bit easier for someone like Troy Brown or Jordan McRae to get like 24 minutes instead of 18. Not saying that either of those guys is a great option, but McRae is only 3,800. He is getting plenty of leash right now after another really good game last night. So just 150 max value guy. Like if I had to choose, Rui's still my favorite value from the Wizards.
What about the Phoenix side? Aaron Baines ruled out, and Frank Kaminsky. Someone asked in our premium chat how much Kaminsky is too much Kaminsky. Well, we'll touch on that right now. And Devin Booker, with the truth is, with Ricky Rubio back, Devin Booker just isn't nearly as appealing. Sure, he's going to have some solid games with Rubio in the mix, but not nearly as many. And that concerns me pretty significantly. Ricky Rubio, $5,500 on DraftKings, though, Adam. We got to talk about that.
Yeah, I thought Kemba at 6,700 was the most ridiculous price point today until I put Rubio back in and noticed how cheap he was. Just obviously a great matchup against Washington. He's been very productive this year. Even if you give him 30 minutes, he just jumps out as one of the top plays on the entire slate. So that's pretty clearly a mispriced. And even on other sites, he's fine in this matchup. As far as Booker goes, Rubio has really hurt his production this year. He's averaged 0.95 points per minute alongside Rubio.
That's crazy, by the way.
Nuts. I'm not as concerned about it in this particular matchup just because the Wizards do play fast, so you get extra possessions. They're a terrible defense. They give up a ton of points in transition. They give up a ton of opportunities in transition. Booker leads the team in transition possessions this year. So I still think it's a great spot for Booker. It's just that instead of being like a huge priority for me if Rubio were out, he's just a good play with Rubio in.
Okay.
What
are you doing with Rubio though? Because 5,500 really is super cheap in a game with a 240 over under.
Yeah, I'm playing tons of him.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in cash for me on DraftKings. He'd be in a lot of tournament lineups for me on any site.
Yeah, it's tough not to get there for sure. What about the rest of Phoenix? You talked about Booker. Is there anybody else you want to discuss because there's so many expected points in this game?
Yeah, Frank Kaminsky, 5K on DraftKings is a really appealing price tag. 4K on FanDuel at power forward is like egregiously bad. I think that, like, not saying you have to have 100% Kaminsky, but if there were one player on FanDuel that I was going to have 100% of, it would probably be Kaminsky at that salary. Only played 24 minutes last game due to foul trouble. I think that as long as he's not getting in foul trouble, you should expect 28 to 30 minutes here in a really, really favorable matchup with Baines out. So he's a priority for me today. It's a great spot for Kelly Oubre. He's second on the team in transition possessions this year. Like I mentioned, when we talked about Booker, Washington really gives it up there. We talked yesterday about it being a game where someone with like Jeremy Grant's skill set really stands out.
Yeah, great call on that, by the way. That was a great call.
Yeah, always.
When I asked you who was the no-namer that could break the slate, your answer was immediately Jeremy Grant. Very solid.
Yeah, it's nice when those work out. But kind of the same thing with Oubre here, where obviously he gets more opportunities than Grant anyway. But a good player in transition, gets a lot of transition opportunities, can knock down open threes, which he should get plenty of from the Wizards. Just I think the perfect type of matchup for Kelly Oubre.
Okay. I think so too. Yeah, he's him, and I believe it was him. You said in transition scoring, right?
Yeah, he has the second most possessions this year on the Suns. He's in, I think, the 72nd percentile going from memory in efficiency.
Yeah, and last time I checked, Oubre and Devin Booker were both top 10 in transition scoring this season. I'm looking now, that's still the case. So very interesting. Like you mentioned, though, the possession's also important. Yeah, Oubre 24.4% frequency. That's up there, man. That's very high. Let's talk about these couple else or a couple other games, and we'll head out of here. I should let you know, though, with Thanksgiving coming up, we're giving away a full year, an annual platinum Awesemo membership. All you have to do is go to Awesemo_com on Twitter. Check the pin tweet for our Thanksgiving giveaway. Guess the total points scored in the Cowboys and Bills Thanksgiving Day game, and retweet and like and reply to that. Also follow at Awesemo_com and Awesemo NFL. $1,000 value. So you'll see the link. Just click there. You register using that link. Win a free year of Platinum Awesemo Plus membership. That's our way of giving back to you. You guys have helped support us ever since we started, and we appreciate you for that. Head over to @Awesemo_com and check out the giveaway. All right, Adam, LA Lakers, New Orleans Pelicans, Lonzo Ball questionable, Josh Hart questionable to play. By the way, Tyson Chandler's starting for Clint Capella. That hasn't worked out particularly well in the past. Lakers, look, very, very solid defense this season, and I don't expect that to change much. They're also playing at a bottom 10 pace, averaging less than 100 possessions per 48. So a Lakers team that we loved to pick on last season, that is not the case this year.
Yeah, it's really the exact opposite. I'm not all that interested in anything from New Orleans here because it is a pace down spot. You do have guys coming back to the lineup. Josh Hart and Lonzo, last I saw before the show, were both questionable. If they're out, then you could get a little bit more value there. You could give a couple more minutes to Drew Holiday, but assuming that at least Ball, who I think is the big one, is in, there's just not a lot for me there against a really good Lakers defense with guys that are still kind of priced up from when Ingram was out.
Okay, so do you like New Orleans at all?
No.
Neither do I. It's a really ugly matchup for them. Anthony Davis making his return to the Pelicans nest. That's not what it's called, I don't think, but it would be cool if they nicknamed it that.
Smoothie King Center?
The Smoothie King Center. What's that? What's worse, that or a Talking Stick Resort Arena?
Yeah, that one's pretty bad too.
Yeah, it's not great. What are you doing with the Lakers, specifically Anthony Davis?
Rostering him. I mean, it has nothing to do with the fact that he used to play for the Pelicans. Like, can that help? Sure. Do we know that it's going to? No. It's the same thing we talk about all the time with revenge narratives. Yeah. But the cool thing with this one is that he's going to be defended by guys like Brandon Ingram and Nico Melli, facing a New Orleans team that plays at one of the fastest paces in the league and is one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So couldn't care less that he used to play for the Pelicans. Still a great play regardless of that. Which was kind of my point that I was making on Twitter today, was that it's a great spot, but you don't need to deal with the revenge stuff, regardless of what he said in the media about it or whatever. Just a really good spot. 10K on DraftKings is really cheap. 11-2 on FanDuel is fine as well. LeBron in obviously a great spot too, but a little bit more expensive than Davis. So I'd give the edge to Davis.
Yeah, the nod goes to Davis for me as well. But this is routinely and almost nightly that they're on the schedule. A Lakers team that outside of LeBron and Anthony Davis really does nothing for me. Rondo's getting decent minutes, but his price isn't at a value point where you say, all right, man, I got to get Rondo in here. He's great in terms of racking up those peripherals. But I will ask you, do you see any interest in a cheap Rondo at $4,800 on FanDuel or $15, very cheap on Yahoo?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't sleep on his salary on Yahoo and
yeah,
FanDuel.
That's really cheap.
Yeah. Still, like if you're talking about a cash format, I would rather go to the Miami guards that are 5K, but he makes for a pretty nice pivot off of a Tyler Hero or, Goran Dragic or something like that.
I don't really have interest in FanDuel or DraftKings, but I actually like them a lot on Yahoo. That's just way too cheap against the Pelicans team that plays at a top 5 pace. And you want to talk bad defense? They are 27th in defensive rating this season. Very, very bad. And they also get absolutely hammered in transition. Not a transition team, the Lakers, because you just look at where the possessions are going, particularly with Anthony Davis. But if Rondo's out there without those guys, I do think you might see them move the ball up and down the court a little bit quicker against this Pelican squad. And he's just a very good passer and a good enough rebounder. So if Rondo finished with like 10, 8, and 6 today, I wouldn't be super surprised by it. Maybe 10, 6, and 6. But at that price point, it's just really friendly. There's nothing else on the Lakers for me, though.
Yeah, same here.
Portland and OKC. We only got a couple minutes. I'm going to turn this one over to you. Right now, though, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 2.5-point dogs, 219 total here in Portland.
Yeah, not one of the more appealing games. I think that you have some decent pricing on guys like Lillard, Whiteside, Melo, and on FanDuel specifically CJ McCollum. But it's more of just guys that if I'm playing a ton of tournament lineups, they'd be getting in the sum. It's not guys that I would expect my night to be, really dependent on. Whiteside's salary on DraftKings is really cheap, but it's not a spot that I really love against Steven Adams. Obviously, a lot of Whiteside's value comes from rebounding, and Adams can be a problem there. And then you also consider that you have guys like Montrezl Harrell at a similar price point, Bam Adebayo at a similar price point, and it kind of pushes Whiteside down a bit for me. Damian Lillard, kind of the same kind of thing. A reasonable price point, but there's just so many point guards that we've talked about that are cheaper and that I think are in a little bit better spots where he's not a priority.
So this game in general, just one that isn't a priority at all for you?
Correct.
All right. Last one here. Then we'll turn it over to the Live Before Lock, Josh Engelman and Fast Eddie Fear. Golden State Warriors, Chicago Bulls. Draymond Green expected to play. Again, I'll turn this over to you. Most of these games towards the end, we didn't have a ton to talk about. But what are your thoughts on the Warriors and Bulls? You can close us out, Adam.
Draymond on DraftKings is really, really favorably priced. 7,400 on FanDuel is fine, but he's, I think, 5,600 or 5,700 on DraftKings, which with him being probable now, I think makes him a really good play there. Eric Paschall still is an appealing option, 24.8% usage rate without Curry or Russell on the floor this year. Chicago's a fast-paced team, decent defensively, but not great. And so I think that it's still a pretty nice spot there. Alec Burks is still fine. The big thing with Green being probable is that Kai Bowman should go back to a secondary role and not be someone that I'm rostering.
So nothing here, basically.
Draymond on DraftKings.
What about Willie Cauley-Stein?
His salary is nice. It's a pretty good matchup against the Bulls, too. I just am not really getting to a ton because I like those mid-range center options so much with Harrell and with Bam, not to mention Embiid and Drummond and Towns and other guys.
All right. That'll do it. Hey, we wish you guys a great Thanksgiving. And don't let politics get in the way of some good stuffing and turkey, all right? Don't be that guy. Just enjoy it. Have a good time. Put it all aside for a day. That's my life lesson, which doesn't mean much, but, for Thanksgiving. Enjoy it. Stay safe. Get an Uber today. And we'll see you back here Friday on the Deeper Dive. Live Before Lock coming up next.
got quite a doozy on our hands. Welcome to Live Before Lock. Wednesday, November 27th, the day before Thanksgiving. We are brought to you by Fantasy Draft. I want to let you know about that right now. They are the only rake-free daily fantasy sports site in the industry. If you're playing on other sites, you could lose up to 30% of your bankroll due to rake. Fantasy Draft has fixed that. All 100% of the entry fees to a contest get paid back to the winners. Go to fantasydraft.com. Use the promo code AWESEMO. You can get a 7-day free trial. Check out Fantasy Draft. And to stop paying rake. Fast Eddie Fear is here with me. We've got quite the monster slate on our hands. News has been coming out over and over and over again for the past hour and a half. How are you, sir? What do you think of this slate?
I'm extremely well. And obviously, I love the slate. Like, it is obviously quite a bit to handle. But more news, more chaos, more decision points. If you have the time to take it all in, it's really quite enjoyable. And it just should be more money in the long run. I think the more it gets dumbed down, the easier it is for everyone. So I hope more things break over the next hour. There's not a ton of pending news left, and a lot of it is 7 o'clock games. But I'm hoping more things get squirrely so we can find the nuts.
I like it. I like it.
Just right off the top of my head.
I'm expecting to get like a weird someone's out in the next 55 minutes. Someone that we haven't talked about.
It's a decent shot.
The 5:30 injury report came out, and Cody Zeller was still listed as probable, which was hysterical.
And then that was, I think, a few minutes after he was ruled out.
Correct.
Right, like it was ruled out at 5:20, at 5:30 it was probable. It was like, okay, there's got to be a little better communication there, or at least the person hitting publish at NBA.com should perhaps be logged into Twitter.
I looked at it and I was like, cool, I don't have to look through the rest of this. It's obviously useless.
They're trying. It's better. I mean, it's worse in my opinion. I honestly think, I don't think there was ever a way in which the chaos was bad for you if you were paying attention. It was at worst random.
Yeah.
Like if it's just guys at random were out, 2 dudes every 4 days, we're just going to be out at random. Well, that didn't hurt you more relative to anyone else over the course of any extended period of time. It might screw you a particular Thursday, and I get not enjoying that Thursday. But I would think that if you were paying attention, it was at worst random for you. And occasionally those things are somewhat predictable. There are coaches with tendencies towards, there are players with tendencies towards, there's people in Miami who like themselves a strip club. Shout out the Rockets getting their only return match against the Heat this year in Houston this time. So presumably the debauchery was kept to a minimum and a somewhat better showing than last time. I was reviewing some of the tape from that game, and I'm like, "Ooh, boy! I don't know if that's Gatorade they're drinking over there. They look a lot of
Pedialyte.
Yeah, a lot of Pedialyte. Got to stay hydrated."
We just got a piece of news. Rudy Gobert will start.
Woo!
I've had him in all day, so I'm happy that I don't have to deal with that.
Isn't that the best? When it's like, I don't have to change anything. I also had him in. I thought he would get in for this matchup. He himself, the price is not, particularly great. The matchup isn't particularly great, but he will be 1.5% owned. So if you want to fire that shot, I don't mind having 2 shares of Rudy Gobert in your 150. Obviously, get your Tony Bradley the heck out of town. A relevant downgrade to Malcolm Brogdon, who is already a little higher owned. The price is obviously great. 15% feels right, or maybe a little bit high. That's a slight cookie downwards for me. So, if you had 25% Brogdon already, which I probably wouldn't have been super thrilled with, I'd be even a little less thrilled with it. But there's obviously nothing wrong with, $6,800, presumably quite healthy Malcolm Brogdon. It's just there's a ton of other plays in that range I think I'd kind of rather get to, and I'd be even more inclined towards similarly priced Lou Williams at this point. Same positions, $100 more on DK.
Speaking of plays you like, I'm just going to hit you with it now. Who is the guy or guys
damn it
that are essential to you on this monstrous 14-game slate? Where does your focus go to start?
All right, yeah. So I'm going to answer it that way. I'm not going to go into the and again, it changes quite clearly by site. I'm not going to go into the Ricky Rubio, Kemba Walker super obvious stuff. So guys, I like more than let me eyeball a couple guys in our ownership projections. Let me lower the volume on my phone so we don't deal with that for another day. I'm going to say, and it's good because it brings us into, I think, a useful talking point, Joel Embiid. My man, a little bit too cheap. There are no matchups there I am concerned about at all on Sacramento. There are a lot of narratives today.
Yeah.
And I think that people who suggest that narratives are impossible to quantify are absolutely correct, or at least very difficult to quantify with any degree of precision. I think people who say either they don't exist or I just ignore them, I don't think those are necessarily the most advantageous strategies to employ. I do think the fact that Joel Embiid, for all of you who don't look at center on center matchups as much as I and some others do, having a bit of a stinker against Marc Gasol, which has been a bit of a trend for him since he entered the league in Memphis and way back in the day. I think that it's not negative for him. I don't think it's very likely whatsoever that Joel Embiid is like, oh man, that was such a bad game. I'm in a funk now. I'll never be good at basketball again. I do think there's some chance he goes out there and goes, okay, I'm back home now. I'm going to put my thing down and make somebody look stupid. So how do I quantify that? I have no idea. I don't think it is a massive advantage, but I do think I like all the spots here. I've liked him in the past. Should he get, some deadman time or whatever this turns into, I'm going to go with Richaun Holmes fouling out in 21 minutes tonight. I'm going to go 21 minutes for Richaun Holmes to get 6 fouls. He likes to get fouls, and boy, does Big JoJo like to give them out. So I think that is a thing that, and again, I'm a big Richaun Holmes fan. Had a 50K winner with Richaun Holmes in the chat just like 4 days ago or something. Nice. This is not the spot I'm going to. I think I think he fouls out. I might take a bet he fouls out. That's probably not quite 50% likely, but it is a very significant likelihood. And I think it's sort of like the Anthony Davis thing. That's number one narrative tonight to sort of segue into that. I don't think it is reasonable to look at Anthony Davis and be like, oh, clearly in this spot he's going to, like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. And I think some of the social media reporting of what he's said has been selective. I don't want to say intentionally misrepresentative, but I've seen quoted many times, like he said, that's the game of the year for me. That's true. But the entire context of it came out of a 10-minute interview he did with Shams Charania, where he's like, I'm worried, I'm going to be nervous. It's like, he didn't say a single thing like, I'm going to go out there and put my thing down and make them feel horrible. Like, he did not give a single aggressive quote where he made it sound like he's like, oh, I normally don't get nervous before basketball games. I'm going to be nervous before this one. Now, again, I would say that if you asked me to statistically state what it means, that I think it raises the ceiling and lowers the floor. I do think there would be some way that it increases the delta or the variance or the deviation in his performance over time in this individual game versus an identical game otherwise. And I would honestly say I think it's positive, simply because I think he doesn't want to have a bad game. I think LeBron doesn't want him to have a bad game. The two of them both seem to be very interested in their own stuff and their awards and whoever gets Defensive Player of the Year or MVP and the team doing well. But I do think LeBron wants him to look good in this spot. And that's something he has some power to actually make happen. So I think, the floor is a little higher. If he's out there and he's got, 6 points and 4 rebounds at halftime, I think they make a real effort for it. So I just think overtime versus in this matchup versus him against an identical team that just he didn't happen to play for in the past. Yes, I think he is in some way statistically advantaged versus an otherwise identical team. I can't quantify it. I don't think anybody can. But yeah, I'd say the floor is a little higher because nobody wants him to look bad out there tonight. And, it's certainly, it's not like he needs an advantage to be Anthony Davis against a woeful New Orleans defense to go off and put up 80 anyway.
Right.
So it's still perfectly possible. But yeah, I mean, that's my take on Narrative Street.
Here's one question for you, and we're basically on the exact same page here. Today's not going to be a really good example because Anthony Davis is projected for like no ownership, along with 95% of this slate because there's just so many people.
Sure.
Do you think that narratives affect ownership more than the actual impact to their fantasy production? What I mean is, do you think they end up over-owned in comparison to what the actual edge or what the actual increase would be?
It's tough because it's sort of a blunt description, because narratives exist in varying degrees. Like there's a Lonzo narrative tonight, and there's Josh Hart if he's in their narrative tonight, and there's lots of narratives. So like the super big narratives, I don't know. I would think it's roughly proportional. Like, do I think a few extra people click on Anthony Davis tonight? Yeah, but I also, as I stated before, think his ownership is minorly clicked. I would guess the rise in ownership is a little greater. I'm guessing I'd, project Anthony Davis for an extra, point tonight if I somehow mathed it out, or a point and a half or something. It would not be a massive significance, and I suspect the number of clicks are slightly greater. And for that reason, it is largely much ado about nothing. But I do think that there's relevance in narratives, and again, I do think it's relevant who you're talking about and whether or not they have the ability to go out and do that. If you're talking about Yanis or LeBron or Anthony Davis, those are guys who can radically impact what they do. But sometimes you're like, oh, Trevor Ariza revenge, and it's like, what degree of control do you believe Trevor Ariza has in his I think he's out tonight, by the way, but what degree of Trevor Ariza revenge do you expect is possible? Anyway,
none is the answer.
Right. It's just like, and there's plenty of guys who play on teams where it's like, you really think Popovich is going to let, Aldridge go out there and go into business for himself against Portland? And so, again, it's very difficult to put a number on, but I always think dismissing it is a little.
It is crazy to see the ownership on the studs, so to speak. And I'm just going to look from DraftKings today. A lot of the opinions that I'm going to give over the next 45 minutes, since we're already moving pretty quickly, will be FanDuel based. I'm not playing on DraftKings at all today. Too many games live on the show. No chance I wanted to try managing both of them.
Fair.
Ownership for these DraftKings guys, in order of salary from top to bottom. So, starting at like Yanis, 8, 7, 4, 4, 4, 4. I mean, we are just, it's a wide net being cast at the top.
Yeah.
So I like the call of saying like I like Joel Embiid here. He's 9% owned. I'm gonna get X and plant a bit of a flag.
Right, and it is our first slate of this size this year. Yeah. So it is mathematically a bit unintuitive for everyone, because you're used to, like, you would inherently look at good matchup Joel Embiid with some sort of narrative at 9% and be like, oh my God, but then keep in mind that applies to roughly the heck everybody. So
ownership is largely irrelevant today outside of the extremes.
It should be considered less.
Yeah.
And again, especially one of the things I like to talk about the 10-second version is that it's not really ownership, it's the inverse of ownership.
Yeah. There's no difference between Joel Embiid at 9 and Karl Anthony Towns at 4 for all intents and purposes.
Correct. I bet you like Towns tonight.
On DraftKings, I would rather have Embiid at this point.
Good man. I was right. I was going to have to talk you off Towns.
FanDuel, it's close, but also Embiid.
All right. Hold on. Oh, we can let it go then.
Yeah.
I have a Towns against the Spurs thing that I have to do about 6 times a year and whatever. But for reference, I'll real quickly say I'd like LaMarcus Aldridge again. If you look at the last dozen games of LaMarcus Aldridge versus Karl Anthony Towns when they started center, they have about the same number of fantasy points. It's really, really close. Like, the Spurs really make a concerted effort, and Aldridge guards him extremely well, and they rotate very well to not give him any 3-pointers. And he's for Towns to pay off his price tonight, I think you'd have to have his career high game against the Spurs. In the last 5 years, I think he's eclipsed, 50 twice in 20 games or something is about the number. Like, it's a real thing for me. And I'm so I'd be happier to get to more Aldridge in the field, which I imagine is in the 8-10% range. And I would have 0 Karl Anthony Towns. He's 4 or 5%. So that's not a very bold take, but I would just go a lot of other places.
Okay. Got a $5 super chat from Samuel Snyder. Best center on FanDuel under 5K. That answer, I think, is Bismack Biyombo?
Ooh.
Jackson Hayes? One of those two.
To be Jackson Hayes or Biyombo, but I will point out that for me, if he starts, it's going to be Enes Kanter. I don't know if we have a Celtics lineup yet, but that's actually very easily for me, Enes Kanter, if he starts. I was pretty excited for Daniel Tice to take a much-deserved day off, and him coming back was unfortunate because it just screws that all up. But I would have had Enes Kanter at 4,500 on FanDuel for like 24 minutes and 29 fantasy points in that matchup. Like I'd have been a pretty massive fan. So on the off chance that because he's not 100%, Tice doesn't start, him even being active would reduce my guess for minutes for Enes to like 18 to 20 minutes, but he'd still be my answer to that question.
Okay.
So I don't think we have a Celtics lineup yet, but that's, I think, a relevant thing.
Yeah,
Barrett
sure.
starting, Knox available to do nothing. Good. Okay.
George Hill out officially.
Yep.
Chris Middleton off the bench.
Yep, that's what I expected. You can still go with a little DiVincenzo if that's your sauce of choice. Still a big fan of Eric Bledsoe. That is a particularly brilliant matchup. I don't think he'll be owned quite as much as he should be in the world of Kemba Walker being the most relevant pivot. Like I really like Kemba Walker tonight. I have him projected for a little over 40, but I have him projected with I think a point more than Eric Bledsoe. I'm actually made Bledsoe a point higher, but I have them at basically identical projections, and I think Kemba is going to be roughly 4 times owned. So I have no issue with any amount of Kemba you want to get in your life, but I would get over on Bledsoe.
So this is not the first time this has happened today. The last one is still hanging out there. Christian in YouTube chat, also a premium sub, $100 super chat donation. Appreciate the hard work y'all put in. Eddie, I hope you stay in this field. Your research and knowledge is immeasurably appreciated.
No, stop.
I know you'd like this to go to a charity, but maybe you could pay it forward. Christian, for the third time for me today, I gave a thanks internally for number 2. That was for the deeper dive. Thank you so much for your super chat.
Wait, the same guy has donated $100 3 times to our super whatever.
Hit it on the strategy show, hit it on the deeper dive, hit it on live before lock. He's had a big year this year, thanks to he says
great.
Thanks to us, but thanks to you and only you. You make the decisions, you make the lineups.
Yeah, exactly. Always make sure to give yourself credit. I love you guys. The best part of this job, and should I hang them up at the end of this year, the part I will absolutely miss the most is the people. Really met some shout out to our guy Rinpack. Paid off a 50-1 last night, and is hedging towards making 6 digits. I really feel like we're up to the Return of the Jedi stage of our relationship, where he's Luke and I'm Obi-Wan, where I occasionally show up in my green misty form and give him some advice, but he's the real Jedi master at this point. I intend him to replace me. Rimpak, great guy, brilliant friend, really smart guy, needs no further help from me. So shout out to him. Massive day yesterday.
Enjoy Los Angeles.
Yeah, enjoy Los Angeles. I have been told I may be dragged along as a +1. So there may be a live show or two from Los Angeles. We will see how that goes. Another guy in the chat, by the way, Rick Atari, another real one. Great chat with him earlier today. Life, family, and all the things. So obviously we got a lot of basketball to talk about, but a couple of guys I'm big fans of, and by extension, all you guys in the chat have really made this incredibly fun for me.
If Ja Morant is ruled out, windmill slam dunk on a certain backup point guard?
Well, which one? Tyus Jones or DeAnthony Melton?
Tyus Jones.
DeAnthony Melton wouldn't be out of play for me. I know this sounds crazy, but that game can get crap out of hand, right? Tyus Jones is 3,200. He becomes the obvious play. Definite windmill slam if that news comes at 6:55 and you are appropriately appointed to execute that plan. Yes, Tyus. That news happens in a minute and a half at 6:24 or something. I like him. I like him quite a bit, but at 6:55, I'm fine if you end up playing 60% Tyus. Like, I don't have a problem if you take an overwhelming position there. He's cheap enough. The rest of the value is somewhat specious, and it feels very good. I think in an even game, he gets out there. I mean, Ja Morant missed 1 game earlier this year. I think Tyus played 28, game blew out a little bit. He probably would have played 30. DeAnthony Melton backed him up and played the other 20 minutes at point guard. They split it even. So if you're going with blowout in that contest, which I think is already a reasonable possibility, and even more likely if you take Ja Morant off the court, I think it's reasonable to overexpose yourself a little bit more to Jonas Valanciunas. I already think that's a matchup in which he can spike a very reasonable upside, 6,200. He's not very much owned. I would want a little more in the event that Ja Morant goes out. Tyus Jones, the later it is, the more I'm happy taking in an overwhelming position there.
Okay. We just got one other super chat, $1.69 from your old pal Emac.
That's excellent. Love you guys. There is a point. I'm gonna make a rule right now on a show with 14 games and 37 minutes to go. Your super chat must be at least $11.69, or we're not stopping the show for you. Ooh. It's not that we don't appreciate and much love you, but we gotta set standards. My wife never did, but you guys, we are.
Yeah, it's gonna get really hectic in the next 37 minutes. So
yeah, if we take 1 minute every time someone throws $2 at us, it's just gonna be like that time I got that job stripping in college.
Let's talk about some of the other likes, but let's start it from an ownership perspective. Current most chalky guy on DraftKings as of right now, $5,500 Ricky Rubio.
Yep.
How do you feel about a 37% owned Ricky Rubio on a 14 gamer?
It's probably still too high. I think he plays 30 minutes. I love him. That's a perfect. There could be more than that. The matchup is not going to get any better. Offense flows much. There's nothing bad to say about it, and that price is $1,500 too cheap. 37% is more exposed than I want to be to a returning from injury. The most popular player on the slate. There's not many places where everyone is owned 8, 10, 12% that you can get an ownership edge. I get to drop maybe 40% on the field and not play that guy. I would probably come in with less. I don't have a strong take on it because it is appropriately absurd of a price, and I'm
okay. We'll hit the next guy on the list as soon as my little spinning dial on.
I'm guessing it's a former UConn star. Just gonna guess.
Jake Voskuhl, 27% ownership.
Oh wow! I thought he was still working at that car wash. That's it's Kemba, right?
It is Kemba.
Yeah, and what is he? High 20s.
Kemba 28.
Yep. Again, no strong take. Not going to manufacture one. That feels about right. He is well underpriced. There is a very safe floor. The matchup is plenty juicy. It is a pricing error. I have no problem if you are playing between 0 and 100% Kemba. I really don't. Someone's like, I'm playing 100% Kemba. I'd be like, that's fine. Probably won't screw you. Expose yourself to a big upside. Someone goes, I'm playing 0. I'd be like, that's fine. Probably won't screw you. Like, there's a lot of reasonable guys on the slate. I'd probably rather 100 than 0 if you gave me those two options, but that number feels appropriate.
Ja Morant and Kyle Anderson remain game time decisions, so no real update there. Move on to the next guy in the list of ownership. This one I don't get. Willie Cauley-Stein, 24%. That will go down now that Draymond is in, I would imagine. Although they don't really impact each other.
Kind of. There are so few bodies. They do more than you would intuitively expect. Just because you get the Spellman and the Chris and it's relevant is what I'm saying. If they're all hands on deck, it actually does not matter. In this case, I do think it moves a minutes projection 2 either way or something. But yes, I do it's a great matchup. $4,700. I'm getting, but that's too high of a percentage. Like 20 something you said is too much for Willie Cauley-Stein, who even with their remarkable shorthandedness has been playing himself 28 minutes.
Yeah.
Like if I thought there was a chance he went out there and played 37 minutes, all right, 37 minutes against, Bulls centers. That's a real thing.
Yeah, he's not getting the run one way or the other. Like the stupid we only have 8 guys run is not showing up for Willie Cauley-Stein.
Yeah, he's under the minutes average.
Yeah.
I mean, he said that team averages 8 dudes. That's 30 minutes a guy. He's getting less run than the average player on that team. I'd rather have me some Kai Bowman. Come up with $1,000. Swap some guys around.
So you got your wish. $19.99. Christian Tixon got first 8 times this year on Showdown NFL. Thanks to you guys. So try an NBA now. You came to the right place.
Are you on that side of me? Showdown NFL. Not me. Nothing to do with me.
Well, now he's trying us for NBA. You're getting quite the duo at this point.
Yeah, no, this is how many viewers do we have right now?
We have 3,108.
That's terribly depressing. All right, let's continue.
I think we underestimated how many people were going out to drink today. I was hoping for bad weather up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, that'd have been good. Well, we'll get it one of these days. Blizzard time. All right, let's keep it moving.
4th in ownership, the only other person north of 20%, Lou Will, 21.6.
I like it. I probably have nominally more. It is a particularly brilliant matchup. They can't guard him. You want Morant in for what it is worth for your Lou Williams, both for the ability of the game to stay competitive would be relevant for his projection, and you want John Morant out there playing defense, hypothetically. So you would want John Morant in for your Lou Williams news. But yeah, that's I really like him. No issues on the back-to-back with him. Again, makes it real easy. No games tomorrow. So the only two teams on the back-to-back are Washington and Los Angeles, who played yesterday. Both road back-to-backs for those two teams. I'm not worried about Lou Williams' minutes here. He played, I think, 37 and 41 in a back-to-back at one point this year, and last night was at 20. I don't quite recall, but I'm not at all concerned with it, and no Kawhi, and that feels juicy, and I imagine Paul George is coming up on this list pretty soon, and I'm similarly bullish on him at his price. So, yeah, I like those men.
Okay. Yeah, Paul George would be next, but $25 super chat from Lincoln Smith. No message whatsoever, so just shout out to Lincoln, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving.
I really should have made that $111.69. Hey, we could have made a lot more money. This would annoy me if I was watching the show. Go ahead. I'm just going to shut up.
Christian Tixon runs it back again. Here's another $20. Thanks for pronouncing my name correctly for the first time. You're quite welcome. We're still not done. Justin Swearingen, friend of the program, $100 super chat. Top value on FanDuel for GPP and an Eddie ranking review recap. I think that we need to sort of hit the high notes of your ranks for today.
Yeah. Okay. I will. That's quite a thing. Let me look at FanDuel ownerships real quick to answer that question, because your best value play is probably Frank Kaminsky, but I have a feeling he's gonna be pretty close to. Hey, look, top of the list. Yeah.
Goran Dragic, 5K on FanDuel is probably my top option.
If this ownership, certainly. I mean, we have none at 35, Hero at 29, Dragic at I have to page down. So if this holds remotely, we have Dragic at 15 and those two guys at roughly double ownership. And so you're getting some direct leverage against the field. I do think it is remarkably appropriate to have at least one of those gentlemen in your lineup, especially on FanDuel. DraftKings, you can get away from it. FanDuel, they're all dollar per dollar well cheaper when it usually works the other way. You should cost, whatever it would be, 10% more on FanDuel than DraftKings. They're all, 10% less. So, I like a lot of other point guards. I think ownership aside, lineup construction, I'd have been slightly more inclined to get Hero in there. Best projection for me would actually be none. But yeah, I like all those guys quite a bit. So value dude on FanDuel. Sorry, I'm in the man paid for it. I got to take a minute and look this all over top to bottom here and come up with
you take a look at that. Names. I'm going to rip through everybody that stands out to me.
Go ahead.
I'll buy you 30 seconds.
I don't mind my boy Jordan McRae again, by the way. That worked out yesterday. And he's not showing up as ownership. And, he's on a string of getting 20, 25 fantasy points, Jan every day. The ceiling is a little bit capped because it seems to be fairly unlikely he's ever going to run out there and get, 30 minutes or something. But is on a string of between last night he got 30 fantasy points, but before that was at 15 to 25, 4 games in a row that he played. He was, I think, ill for the Orlando game.
Shouts to Tyler Lee, $11.69. So he hit yours on the dot. Goran Dragic, Dante DiVincenzo, Tyler Hero, Terrence Ross, Glenn Robinson the third. I don't know. Small forward kind of stinks for value. Frank Kaminsky, as mentioned previously. Don't sleep on PJ Tucker now that Clint Capella is out. And then the bottom of center is just a wealth of value on terms of FanDuel. Kelly Olynyk, Jake Puddle, Jackson Hayes, Bismack Biyombo. I mean, you can make, on a different day, you can make cases for like Damian Jones and JaVale, and this is just not that day on a 14-gamer.
Yeah, I mean, they largely extricated Alex Len from the lineup last game. Got played like 4 minutes or something. You had Jones and Fernando, and they had 5 guys play center in that game. I would be concerned with Biyombo. He missed 1 game this year, that being Cody Zeller. I think it was only 1 game, but it was second or third game of the season they played the Timberwolves, and Biyombo played 18-20 minutes. Now I think they got pretty heartily whooped, so he probably lost some time there in the blowout. But You don't want Bismack Biyombo at anything but minimum price on a slate this big, and he's like $4,000. I think I rated him double C's, and that may have been generous.
Yeah, 3,900 today.
Okay, so yeah, that would be down the list for me. So I at the moment, as far as pure value goes, I really like a mid-priced build on FanDuel. So pure, points per dollar, I'll go with Frank Kaminsky, and GPPs, I'll run my boy Jordan McRae out there again, who doesn't appear like he's going to engender that significant ownership. And I'm going to look for anything else that screams out at me under, say, 4K on FanDuel. If I come up with it, I'll yell it out at you.
Okay, and while I yell out that Cameron Shepard just dropped in the $100 super chat, no question, just a simple thanks to you, Eddie, Josh, Alex, and everybody at Osmo. You guys are a big part of the NBA success I've been having this season. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving. And this is a premium sub, so shout out to K-Shep Killicam.
Nice.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. The whole nine. You guys are blowing my mind today with this stuff. Honestly.
Yeah, apparently there was. I didn't catch any of the earlier shows. Generally doing my old thing. I will say another spicy one at minimum price center. I think Daniel Gafford, I would have a non-zero amount of, because I do think there are a couple ways that you could get Carter foul trouble, and he's showing he can have a big game, and the matchup at Golden State is pretty juicy. Would have preferred Draymond out, but still Daniel Gafford I'd have a non-zero share of. So There's another way to go. But again, keep an eye on that Celtics lineup. I'm gonna really like Enes Kanter if we get news that he randomly starts, which is
a good shout.
Possible.
I like where your head's at. I liked Kanter a lot this morning when I thought that Daniel Tice wasn't playing.
Yeah, I mean, they confirmed that he will play. That has been said. We haven't confirmed that he'll necessarily start, and they've messed things around. So I think there's a chance he'll start, and you'll get him at 2%, and that matchup's very nice.
Do you think that Kevin Love is going to play?
I'll go no.
Yeah.
There's enough uncertainty. Teams get to give the guy the extra day of rest. They're
Tice
not
starting.
Didn't
Didn't mean to cut you off, but obviously we were talking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's that.
Yeah.
So that really doesn't do a ton. You could play Tice, you could play Bob Williams, you could play Enes Kanter at 5K, 4K, 4.5 respectively. None of them would be guys I would have more than a lineup or two out of 150.
Why sift through that on a day like today and try to guess out of one of those three?
Yeah, no, that seems unnecessary.
We're not struggling to find value at this point.
Yeah. So Justice Winslow is going to come off the bench. That was expected. The exact words out of Eric Spoelstra's mouth were that he would not play a lot, quote unquote.
Okay.
So, I have him right now for 21 minutes. I have no confidence whatsoever in that number, but it's safe to say it's not going to be 30 or something. So you're dealing with not just the additional time and usage with no Butler and a diminished Winslow, but also the extended ball handling time, which is where I do think none from a raw projection standpoint, I think just ends up playing a lot of point in a matchup that I really like. So he's the one who I project the best. If you got him at double the ownership of say Tyler Hero, I would be a little more inclined towards Hero, but you should get time with them next to each other, not purely as one backing up the other or Hero backing up Kendrick Nunn specifically. And I'm a fan of the matchup quite a bit. So I do like all those guys and am close to love on FanDuel. I mean, they are well underpriced.
We just got an ownership update. Goran Dragic up to 16%. Kaminsky at 44 on FanDuel. No one else anywhere really higher than 20. Kendrick Nunn at 21. But that update just came in. On DraftKings, ownership goes Rubio, Draymond Green, Kemba Walker, Lou Williams, Willie Cauley stuff.
I'd have less than that of Draymond, but obviously that price has descended to a pretty juicy number. It says 37% if I'm seeing that right. I would come in under 37%, largely for the same reasons as Rubio and Draymond. I don't know how to say this. Draymond is again the best number 3 man in the league, and he is just not someone who takes advantage of situations like this. Like there have been plenty of games where he's the guy and it just doesn't turn out all the time. He spikes big games, but they tend to be apropos of large amounts of defensive stats, and it just they're really difficult to predict. He is a player with a really high variance in almost any probability model I work on, because he doesn't conform to what you expect in lots of situations. So it's not ideal for Kai Bowman if you were going to do that. It's not. I mean, it affects a few things, but honestly, this nice $5,700 is well underpriced. I mean, he should cost against the Bulls $7,200 or something would be an appropriate DK price.
Right,
So
yeah.
way too cheap. But the likelihood of failure for him is so much greater than other chalk, like say Kemba Walker. Like if Kemba got 22 fantasy points tonight, I would be shocked, barring injury. If Draymond Green did it, I'd be like, yeah, that was really always something that could have happened. So
yeah, we don't get points for like his plus minus, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be all minus for that team, but it's the Bulls.
Yeah,
They got
relative
a shot.
plus minus.
Yeah, that should be a stat actually.
I mean, like the adjusted plus minus sort of is.
Yeah.
All right, where do we go from here? Perfect opportunity for you guys to hit the like button. If you guys get to 1,500 likes, we can unlock ownership. We're currently at 818, so you guys are slack, but let's see if we can get that number over 1,000. Super chats are massive. Let's see if we can get those thumbs up. Those are free for you guys.
Some people are, by the way, watching the show and drinking, apparently. Yeah. A little bit lazy.
Smart people, I think.
Yeah. You can go back to my guy, Zach LaVine again. That's still too low ownership. That matchup is very, very juicy. Draymond in tilted even a little more his way. He and Laurie are guys who carry big upsides at all time. I'm 2 for 2 on Zach LaVine days this year, by the way. There's been 2 days I've been a big fan of his, and he's been monstrous each time, and I see no reason that he shouldn't be on more than the 5 or 6% he's sitting at. So that's another guy who I'd be very interested in picking up some extra pieces of.
I am terrified of that game.
Yeah, that's with good cause.
That is a very scary late night hammer.
With good cause. But I do think that, LaVine is the one guy who's we've seen floor games recently, but the matchup is pristine. This is a very, very poor Golden State defense. Even with Draymond out there with the kids, it's still a really bad defense, and just the ceiling is high enough that my guy feels pretty good to me.
Still,
what do you think about the rest of that game? Like, I think people are understandably about 2 poor teams dealing with any number of issues. LaVine is a key piece for me. Clearly, we expected at least people to be pretty interested in Willie Cauley-Stein prior to Draymond's reemergence from the crypt. It feels like there should be something else there. It's certainly a potential Kobe White day. Like, he's shown the ability to come out, play 25 minutes, take 20 shots. That should have some interest. So.
He's the guy I like the most on FanDuel, oddly enough. And this is not at all what I expected. I really don't have any interest at all in Chicago. And that's the scariest part of it for me, because this is clearly a fantastic spot for someone like Zach LaVine. It is clearly a fantastic spot for Lauri Markkanen when he's whatever 58. He is right now. And his price is clearly fantastic. I'm not comfortable at all not being on Chicago. I'm significantly more on Golden State. And that's been muted a bit now that Draymond is in. So it's mostly just like Burks, Pascal, Glenn Robinson. Yep,
that feels right. I mean, Glenn Robinson, I don't know what the price is. Side by side, he is just too expensive some places. Like, so it ends up being side by side with Glenn Robinson. Yeah, I mean, for the Bulls, I think I ranked LaVine, Markkanen, and Kobe as the A's and GPPs. So that would obviously be the guys I'd first be looking to target in that format. But especially with Draymond in now, that I would have LaVine pretty highly on top out of those 3. You're in another, Memphis-like situation, a couple other situations where he's been outstanding this year. I don't know if he'll get 64 again. I mean, and that was an exciting day for me. I gave him a AA ranking for the first day of the year, and he went out and made 13 3-pointers and set up, made 2 of them in the last 10 seconds of the game for the win, and had 65 fantasy points. There's no reason that can't happen here.
Sure. Cedric Phillips, $20 super chat. Drummond or Embiid in a GPP on FanDuel. Love you, Eddie and Josh. I know where you're going.
Love you too. I will take Embiid. I am absolutely fine playing Andre Drummond. The matchup with Charlotte is great. With Zeller in, their rebounding is very, very poor. Yes. They pull in the least rebounds in the NBA. So I would play Drummond in cash. Like, it is hard for me to imagine Andre Drummond doesn't have 23 fantasy points worth of rebounds. And then, but I still think it's a little more likely I get an absolutely stupid game out of Embiid. So for ownership, which I suspect is a little bit lower, I would also, but regardless, I'm going to go with Embiid. But I would play Andre Drummond in cash. Him not getting 40 seems almost impossible. Him getting 50 seems pretty likely. I'll hunt the 70.
Embiid 8%, Drummond 14%. I've got them essentially equal, a hair ahead for Embiid, and I would prefer Embiid in the GPP.
Yep, right with you. Same answer.
I'm running my crunch right now. I figure I'll be able to use this one, but immediately when this crunch is done, and I want to put this information out for everybody else, I am going to run another crunch with Ja Morant out and Tyus Jones in at whatever projection I would think to be getting Tyus Jones, so that if this breaks in the next 15 minutes, I've got a backup plan.
Nice.
Highly recommend that everybody does that.
Yeah, and again, something I try to talk about quite a bit is have a plan.
Yeah.
Like, really have a plan for in general, and then even more specifically, it's a joke, but this is real money people are playing for. $100 a night, $1,000 a night you guys are playing for. Take time and fire drill this. I really get in there and be like, okay, ready? It's do it at 7 a.m. Pretend it's 7 o'clock at night. It's 6:58. Draw a player at random from your player pool to whom you were exposed more than 30%. And imagine he went out. Go. What do? How quickly can you fix it? And then the next step is, once you can fix it, how can you get more money on the table? How can you most quickly flood the table with chips? That's again, I think it's a massive thing to find a way to, when you have an advantage. If you think there's a guy who's 30% chalk who's going to go out 2 minutes before lock, which is going to happen 2 to 7 times a year, that has to be the day where you make more than 1 day's worth of money. So I strongly encourage people to, whatever your setup is, whatever software you're using, find a way that you are going to take advantage.
Couldn't agree more. That's perfect advice. I'm doing that as much as I possibly can right now.
Yeah. The two pieces of fantasy advice that I don't hear enough are that part of the process, be prepared for special events, and vary your bet size. Like the bad advice of make sure you bet the same amount every day, I hear bandied about 790 times a year. The make sure you get more money in there and take advantage when you think you're advantaged, I hear like 2 or 3 times a year. So those are the two things that ruffle my feathers.
Fair enough. I don't have anything else to touch on with regards to ownership. Kendrick Nunn at 19% feels high given where everyone else's ownership is today. But I also feel that same way about Willie Cauley-Stein. So,
right, and I think we still have Willie Cauley-Stein. Yeah, we still have Willie Cauley-Stein higher. I would easily invert those numbers.
Yeah,
like Willie Cauley-Stein in cash is fine with me for 4,700 or less. He would be in my top 2 or 3 guys. That's an absolutely fine number. But again, the ceiling's limited a little bit. He's just really chalky. Yeah. If you're going to look at guys between 4,500 and 5,000, get some Jake Puddle in your life. Play Dylan Brooks for the exact same price. Play Corey Joseph, who we have every reason to think plays 35 minutes. It's not a day I'd want to be super over on him, but he's at 5% or what have you. Make that change as opposed to a 30% owned Willie Cauley-Stein or whatever. I would have them projected pretty similarly. Play Jackson Hayes. We know Derek Favors is out. That matchup's terrible. I really want to go there, but again, 3% versus 25 or 30.
Also,
play Dirk White.
Watch out for Jahlil Okafor in that one.
Play Hachimura. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. And again, late swap if you're playing on DraftKings. Like aggressively late swap. People are just not doing it enough this year. Of the 10 big, $50,000, $100,000 price tags winnings that I've seen in the last few weeks, many of them, about half, were, hey, I got this guy who should have been 40% owned at 14% owned because the news came out at 7:05. Use that stuff. Swap aggressively. If all else is even, swap. I mean, if all else is even, don't be a slave of the moment and be like, ooh, shiny new toy. I'm going to get rid of a better play because I want to swap. If you have significantly better projection on your original guys, stand fast. But yeah, there's all kinds of time with, Andrew Wiggins is going to play. That made 2 guys, I know, at least a collective $100,000 because we got him at 4% owned.
Something about that too. Do you think that you should be re-optimizing your lineups after every set of games, Lock, as you get more information on your lineups? Because I think that's probably the biggest edge that's out there that you don't ever hear anyone talk about. Making changes to your lineups while you're active, not necessarily because of news.
Yeah. Well, there's, and again, we talk about late swap a lot. One of the reasons why I think several people who complain about the absence of late swap on FanDuel are arguing against their own interests is the fact that the best players do that. Now, it is a lot to ask.
Yes.
Okay. If I was playing, there is a real issue of your attention span and you're not wanting to burn yourself out. And these are things that really matter for me. So if it costs you nothing, I can't think of why you wouldn't do that.
Correct.
But there's people who I end up looking at on a slate like today. I did somewhere around 5 hours of research, and then I have an hour for the show, and I'll be in chat afterwards as some of the late slates come out. It's just a lot of time. So I don't think the edge many days is particularly massive when there isn't significant changing pieces. But yeah, I mean, there is, if you're playing cash lineups, let's say, and you're playing in 50-50s and you're in large 50-50s, or a top 500 get paid, top 500 don't get paid. And after the first series of games, you're doing terrible. You need to do some weird crap because your 50-50 lineup is probably pretty chalky and everyone else has the same guys you have. So you have to take out Kemba Walker and put in Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
Because you need to catch up on the field significantly. You have to get away from the chalk at that point. It's clearly mathematically correct to do so. So if you took one weird stance in your cash lineup and you played, I don't know, Terrence Ross, and Terrence Ross had an abysmal 11 fantasy point game, you need to up your variance for later in the evening. Conversely, if Terrence Ross went off in that first game and scored 53 fantasy points, you can afford to be super conservative. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put in Tristan Thompson over this guy, and I'm just going to play guys I know will get me enough points because this lineup is only in 50-50s, and it's going to cash if everyone just gives me an even day now because I nutted it out with Terrence Ross. There are little bit, again, I was compared to climbing up a hill. There are little steps you can get up that hill, and those are little steps. So if it costs you nothing, absolutely, constantly be vigilant, looking for news all night, watching basketball, doing everything you can. I just understand that I don't mean to make it sound like it is a small thing to have laser-like focus for 8 hours. 250 days of basketball in here, it can be a bit of a grind.
It can be a little bit of a grind. It's very true. Very true. Got the dummy crunch running just in case, but we did get a little bit of information that Ja Morant is out warming up and looks good moving. So
yeah, and that's all I've seen so far, but that's what I expect. Jake Puddle is getting the start, by the way.
Yeah, I think they're pretty pot committed to that now.
That makes me like Towns a little bit more.
Yeah,
if you will, he will see proportionally a little bit less Aldridge. I don't have strong memories of Towns, Jake Puddle as a conversation, but
you don't have Aldridge, that filed away somewhere.
Sorry, I got to watch more tape. Yeah. So DeJounte Murray not starting again. Seems relevant.
Yeah, that's just a weird team. A team that does not make any trades is desperately needing a trade right now.
Yeah, they can go into full development mode. I like the kids on that team. I want to see more. Lonnie Walker. They got a lot of guys I want to see get some time.
Here's the question: so, if they traded DeMar DeRozan, are they even worse?
Look, if I'm running that team, not being nearly as smart as Buford and Popovich and the people who run that team, yes, I would look to trade DeMar DeRozan, assuming there were no, negative. They have lots of guys I want to see getting more guard minutes. Lots of kids who can develop into all-stars. So I'm really excited to make that trade, get even more assets, and go back and make the playoffs 20 years in a row, starting 2 years from now.
Yep,
that would be my plan. And no, I don't think they would be woefully worse. So yeah, I would do that. That being said, they may think they're gonna, win the title next year, and I wouldn't say no to their face.
Craziness.
Yeah, it is weird because we're so many years in a row of them being like, oh, that's the end of their streak, and they stretched the hell out of that thing, didn't they? There were a whole lot of years where it's on paper they should win 27 games. They're going to win 47 and be the 7th seed.
Yeah, they were dead in the water. Do we still not have Kevin Love news?
I think game time decisions all I got, baby. Well, we're up to 6:53. I gotta kick it into high gear.
Yeah, game time is in 7 minutes.
They said game time decision, Josh. Why are you getting up in their butt? They said 7 minutes from now. Give them their 7 minutes.
They know already. They need to just tell me.
Oh, Timothy Mozgov officially retired off the books. Pour one out for Timofey.
Pour one out for the summer of 16.
Well, that was a nice free agent season.
Kevin Love will start.
There you go. Okay, so no huge change. I would make sure I had 3% Kevin Love because he's going to be 0.1% owned. And again, that's a woeful basketball. They played opening night or second night or something, and somebody won 94-85 if I'm remembering those numbers correctly. It was not a pretty basketball game. I will say I still like some exposure to John Isaac, especially on FanDuel. He's still a little bit under-owned. His game has made significant leaps forward.
Yeah,
like he is a better basketball player this year. People are like, well, the steals and the blocks are going to regress. For the whole year, dude is averaging like 5 stocks per 36. For not like the last week, for like the whole year. For his career, he's probably averaging 3.5 to 4. If I had to, I mean, he is a real defensive monster. His offensive touch is better, and missing Gordon and Vooch, he's just touching the ball a lot, and small forward and all that jazz. So I'd still, and again, the Cavs quite possibly will screw up and hand him the ball quite a bit. So anyhow, any Tristan Thompson you have is less advantaged. Anything special you were hoping for the extra usage for Sexton or Garland or what have you, or the extra minutes close to the basket for Larry Nance, you can pretty much just abandon Cleveland entirely, as many former Cleveland residents have done.
Can't say I blame
them. Hey, I'm in Ohio, baby. Careful there. I really like Cleveland.
I'm a Pennsylvania guy. I hate those cities too.
Oh wow. Okay. Rust Belt rivalry there, but yeah, and for Orlando, no, massive changes there. The first guy I'm looking to play there would be John Isaac on that team. $4,200 Birch. That's a cheap price, more of a cash play for me. You can birch it up a little bit, but John Isaac, the first guy in that game, I'd be really excited to windmill into some lineups.
We are at 6:55. Get your lineups in. I've got my backup dummy crunch with Tyus Jones locked and loaded here.
RJ Barrett has an upper respiratory infection. Fizdale is aware of it and is going to be mindful of it. If he tells me he's not feeling well, that's what I need to know. Most relevantly, slightly exciting news. Not at all exciting news. Slight cookie for already very cheap Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Not really excited about that in that matchup, but if you have Randle, that's a nice bit of news. I, at this point, would probably get entirely away from RJ Barrett.
Yeah. I would imagine most people were not on RJ Barrett previous to that as well. So,
yeah, I wouldn't think so. There's apparently some really nice anti-Kyrie posters around the city of Boston right now.
I'm sure there are. Right next to bowls of chowder.
Chowder. I like the white chowder. I had one of my first game design jobs was with Upper Deck, working on a Marvel trading card game. And one of the guys who was on the team actually came from Boston, and we were designing a card game. So the word card is said, about every 4 seconds. And he kept saying, I really like this CAD. And there was absolutely no R in it whatsoever. And I thought it was a joke for a while. I didn't know what he was saying for a while. I'm like, what's a CAD? Card. Got it. But it's just, I have the strongest memory of being, it's 11 o'clock on my first day of work. And I'm like, still don't know what this guy is saying.
All I hear is Peter Griffin.
Yeah, it was not dissimilar. Yeah.
Is there anything else we can touch on for these next 3 minutes? I don't know if we're going to be breaking any news that is going to be able to be useful for anyone right now.
Yeah, I always presume you guys did a brilliant job earlier in the day, and based on the results and the super chats and everything else going on, it doesn't appear that I'm wrong. You guys cover the bases nicely, and I get to just come on and talk about basketball off. So there are days I have really strong takes, and days that it's more of a waiting for something to break so we can try to fix it. Sorry, just looking at beat reporters.
You're good.
But yeah, it's been a really encouraging start to the year. If it stays this hot the whole year, nuts.
We got an either or in chat. I don't know if it's going to matter anymore. Bogdan Bogdanovic and Thomas Bryant, or PG and Troy Brown in DK Cash.
In cash, I would play the second one. I wouldn't feel great about it, but I would play the second one. I like Bryant in tournaments quite a bit, but I think that there is, let's see, Raptors starting who they thought we were. Okay, all good. But I feel a little bit worried about Thomas Bryant and cash. I think go a little crazy. I like Mo Wagner in tournaments for that reason. So I think that's where I would land on that. I would go on the second side.
I would also go on the second side.
Was the card game you worked on legendary? No, the card game I was working on then was called the Versus system for Upper Deck Entertainment. I was one of the 4 people who did the core design on that project. And it was called Versus because you could have, Marvel versus DC. So I could have my Batman versus your Wolverine or what have you. It's a pretty cool card game.
6, 50, 9, and 10 seconds. If you don't have your lineups in yet, guys, stop listening to what I'm saying and go put them in. You have 50 seconds. We've got a lot of potential daddy likes to go on. 5 games locking at 7 o'clock. I'm excited. I don't know about you.
Now that just made my night. I hadn't even thought of that.
Big Thanksgiving plans?
Nope. Hanging out, going out to dinner with the family. No turkey being created this year in our kitchen, which is nice. It's a whole hullabaloo when you are the host. Like, it is a whole thing, and everyone seems to go kind of crazy, and the wife just loses her mind. So pretty excited that we are not hosting this year. So going out to Fleming's, going to a nice steakhouse. The last day I'll be off my diet. Got to get back to getting shredded.
No more pretzel rolls on a day-to-day basis.
Am I out? I have several pretzel bread rolls near me. Like, these are the bags that I got. This one this morning. It had 4 in it. Gone. I'll get through some pretzel breads.
I like it. I like it. And we are locked.
Yeah, most of the year it's more of these Atkins chocolate peanut butter bars. Delicious, but right now, just for you, I'm gonna break me off a piece of this Kit Kat bar.
There you go. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Take a bite from me. And let me go ahead, hop over to DK and grab a nice little contest file, and we can
I'm
go
excited.
ahead.
This is going to be tough, by the way. I'm probably gonna screw this up. I think Daddy Like has gone a little better than I would have expected to much of this year. I think I've done better than I would think. But when all the percentages are coming down to these small numbers, I'm gonna, maybe it'll be easier. I guess it should be easier because everything is gonna be narrowed towards a much more, you know what I'm saying? When everybody's 12%, I can't miss by more than 2 or 3%. So who knows?
Oh, we're gonna get we're gonna just see like a sea of dudes at like 4%, and we're gonna be like, that's
It'll be hard to have any strong takes.
Yeah,
So what chalk do we get on this? We have, all right, so 5 really good.
Because we're gonna like everyone probably more than their ownership by.
So we have Philly. Amounts. We have a lot of the good plays. So we have Drummond and Blake.
Yeah.
We have Brogdon went at 7. Kemba went at 7.
Yes. All right, I've got it here. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
3 players on DraftKings in the first 5 games have an ownership north of 10%. 3 double digits. Can you name those players?
Brogdon, Kemba. All right. I gotta get the teams. Nets, Celtics, Pistons, Hornets.
Do you want me to read it off? I have it in front of me.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Celtics, Nets.
Okay.
Hornets, Pistons.
Okay.
Cavs, Magic.
Okay.
Pacers, Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Sixers, Kings.
Okay, so Kemba and Brogdon.
You would be correct.
Okay.
And if we want to get technical, there are 4 that get to 10, but that is only due to rounding up.
I think I'm going to just have to go with both Pistons. I'll go with Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond.
Neither one.
7:30 slide. How long do I there's a lot of information. Crispy. So good. Neither one. Okay, so Kemba,
Neither
Brogdon,
one.
and 2 other guys.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going team by team here.
And any guesses on the highest ownership percentage?
It'll be Kemba.
Correct.
We had him in the high 20s. That felt about right to me. I won't differ with it. 28.
30.5.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah, and I'm very ambivalent towards that number. Neither Blake nor Drummond. That really surprised. I would have thought Blake was higher because of the price and how expensive the center spot was.
Blake is 5th.
Blake is 5th with 9% or something.
9.4. Andre Drummond is 13th. 3.4.
That might change things for me depending on this one. All right, I guess I'll say Embiid.
Joel Embiid is 4th, rounded up to 10%. He is at 9.6.
Yeah, I'm still, very happy with that. Again, 8, 10, 12 are not. Again, I was saying before, we have a minute to explain how the inverse of the ownership is really what you're judging.
Yeah.
Like if I have a guy at 10% and you have a guy at 12%, when my guy does great, I get on 90% of the field. When your guy does great, you get on 88% of the field, which is pretty damn similar. So it's actually the inverse. So the higher the ownerships are, obviously, the more you're trying to get away. Being like, but I often hear people who are like, dude, my guy was 8%, your guy was 12%. That's a full 50% more. Not really. Not really. That's really 88% versus 92%, and his guy was, 4% more. But so Embiid got there.
Who is the second most owned guy on the early slate?
It's second.
With a bullet.
It's nobody on Utah. It's nobody else on the Pacers. Can't be. It's Ben. It can't be Ben Simmons with a bullet. It's second high. It can't be Ben Simmons. There are no other plays that should be remotely that highly owned. Is it an error? Am I forgetting a team? I'm gonna give up on this. What are we, like 4 minutes into me?
It will not be shocking when I say it, but I'm not surprised that you're not landing on it. I
am. I'm supposed to be good at this. God, this is usually this game makes me feel smart. This is not having that effect at the moment.
Would you like me to read the teams off again for you?
No, I got them. There's 5 games dancing around in my head right now.
Okay.
Terry Rozier?
No. Terry Rozier owned 3.4% of the time, just behind Andre Drummond.
It's no one else on the Celtics. It's not going to be Jared Allen, who is too expensive. It's not going to be Kem Birch. It's not. I've gone through every team twice. I will punt the answer. I give up.
Starting center for the Charlotte Hornets, Bismack Biyombo, 27% owned.
What did he cost?
30
I thought he was like
something, maybe?
I thought he was like 4K on DraftKings.
He was 4K on DraftKings.
I would have 0. I would have, if he was the appropriate amount he should be owned, which was 6%, I would have had 6% or something. The number of ways in which he doesn't play 20, I'm trying to, let me put it this way. For you to be happy with him on a slate this large at 4K, you need 30 fantasy points. I would put the odds at him getting 30 fantasy points at under 10%. It's incredibly unlikely. That's that is a grotesque play. Bad internet. You've been good this year. That's bad internet. That's 65% Corey Joseph bad internet. What are you doing? It's Bismack Biyombo. There literally was a pocket stat which the guys at The Athletic or The Ringer or somewhere were talking about. It was the Bismack Biyombo line for a while.
Yeah. Because
he was the lowest usage player in the league, where he had a usage of 3 through 3 months once, where literally he had played 50 basketball games on his first lap through Charlotte and had touched the ball 7 times a game when he didn't rebound it or something. I mean, it's just absurdly, the matchup is so good. with a guy who's going to get every single rebound. And oh, boy.
You said odds of scoring 30, I believe, were 10%.
Yeah.
I have him at odds of scoring 35 at 11%.
Okay. I pulled both numbers completely
Right,
out of my butt, but that's similar enough that my point is made.
At 30, I have 23%.
Okay. I do think that sounds high. You're saying 1 in 5 times? Because I just think the minute ceiling is not there, is where we're going to differ on this. If he does not get in foul trouble and the game stays close, I would project him for like 24 minutes. They are going to cycle through Washington and Williams and Hernan Gomez and all kinds of I think there's almost no chance of 30 minutes. So now you're telling, right. So let's assume it's 25. I need him to put up, 1.2 fantasy points per minute in a bad spot. Good luck. Maybe that happens. It's okay. So yeah, I could not be more negative towards that play. We'll see how it goes, but ugly. Okay, so that really all right. So what else is the ownership?
So
I gotta watch 27% own Bismack Biyombo, not for $3,000, for $4,000 on a 14-game slate. I gotta watch the taste of that one out.
Aggressive chalk and high stakes on FanDuel. Bismack Biyombo, 58% owned in the $220 single entry, 54% owned in the $16.50 baller. So
I think that's horrific. I don't understand. It's the exact same thing as it may be worse than 65% Corey Joseph. And it's just this. There is a massive chance of a score of 12. There's a really significant chance dude plays 18 minutes and scores 12 fantasy points. And someone at center is going to score 60. That you are losing on FanDuel especially. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. On FanDuel, the argument would be he's going to be popular. He can't screw me that much. And there's obviously brilliant pay-up spots at every other position. Okay, I guess. But, in cash, knock yourself out. But like in a $1,600.50 tournament against Drummond, is he the minimum on FanDuel? You think he said 39?
39. 15% chance of scoring 12 or less.
Yeah, so roughly the same at getting. So there's an equal that basically makes my point for me. There's an even chance of him scoring 12 or less, or getting the score you want out of him in a tournament. I think I rest my case.
I'm just gonna hit you with the rest of the ownership because it's just a sea of dudes at like 4, 5, and 6%.
Right, yeah,
so there's there's nothing else to do at this point.
All right, so we had Embiid Griffin, I assume, at 4 or 5.
Correct. 9.6, 9.4. Then Devontae Graham, 6. Taurean Prince, 6. Evan Fournier, 6.
I like that. There's someone has to shoot the ball on that team.
Yeah.
Like that is an ugly ass matchup, but just give me the spot where Evan Fournier takes 20 shots and makes 12. I don't mind that. I'm fine.
Miles Bridges, 5. John Isaac, 5.
Nice.
Ben Simmons. Go ahead.
When you get a second, tell me John Isaac on FanDuel, if you have it handy.
Ownership?
Yeah. I'm just curious.
It might be a tough find just because I don't know if I have it.
Really? Huh?
But let me look.
I wouldn't have had a ton, but I suspect it's 8 to 10. I'd want like 15. Just kind of curious.
Let me hit up chat. Slack or YouTube chat. If you can get John Isaac's ownership on FanDuel in some sort of like reasonable dollar contest.
Not important. We haven't had Ben Simmons yet on DK.
Ben Simmons 4.5.
Oh, okay. That's dude cheap. Plays every position. Like I'd add a little more in that, but again, big slate.
What else?
Where's Andre Drummond?
Andre Drummond was 3.4%. He is next. We had Tobias Harris at 3.5. Andre Drummond 3.5. Terry Rozier 3.5.
Yeah, again, 3 and 10% ownership. Not as big of a difference as it sounds, but I'd be a lot closer on Embiid and him at that point. Like 3 and change. I figured, I guess people aren't following rebounding stats or He's been good. I mean, like every time he plays Cody Zeller with Blake in there, he gets 15 points and 19 rebounds and the smattering others. Like he's a bit more cashy, but 3% is pretty low.
All righty. Then we get to Willie Hernan-Gomez, 3%.
I like that much more than Biyombo at 27.
Tatum at 3, Sabonis, Jared Allen, Jaylen Brown, Luke Kennard, Bamba, Birch, Dinwiddie, Ross, Fultz, PJ Washington. These guys are all 2 or 3%.
I mean, Dinwiddie at 2%. Like the usage is there. Jared Allen in the 2 or 3 or whatever he was. You have a real chance. Jared Allen can do some real damage against, obviously a front court that isn't what it once was in, 35 minutes or something. So, like, I'd be over on Dinwiddie. I'd be over on Jared Allen if I could be. I'd be over on John Isaac, whatever number we had him at.
Isaac
I'd be over on
is
Drummond.
16% owned on FanDuel in the $6.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nice. That's better. Good job.
Appreciate it, guys.
Like he's Sorry?
I was just saying, I appreciate it, chat.
Oh yeah, thanks for giving us time. All right, so nothing real crazy happened there. I guess at the end of every day, I'm on. Yesterday was Jordan McRae and unfortunately Montrezl Harrell Day, who just took the first half off, and today I guess I'm on Bismack Biyombo, just doing what he would normally do, which would make him a pretty dreadful play at 27% at 4K. Boy,
perfect opportunity to close this out on this. Ja Morant available to play. Kyle Anderson out.
Okay. If Morant starts, I mean the matchup is not good.
Embiid is smashing right now, by the way.
Yeah, of course. There's
4 points, 4 boards.
Yeah, in a minute and a half or
2
whatever.
minutes and 39 seconds.
Yeah. Well, there we go. All right. So plus Embiid, down Biyombo. My work here is done. Yesterday was funny. I actually will take one more and talk about one thing. So there are days. It's easy to determine if you have a good day or a bad day when you're playing, which is what I did for a couple thousand days in a row. Now that I do this, there's a much different criteria. So there's days where I feel like I have a great day because I hit one really hot take. Like this guy who's going to be 3% owned, I think goes off for, there's, Zach LaVine day. And then there's days I feel like I have a good day because I'm really off on I really dislike some popular chalk and it fails. And that's happened a few times this year. And then there's just times I feel like I'm much more right than I'm wrong. Then there's yesterday, which was a bad, I was bad yesterday. I got a lot of compliments and I was not good yesterday. I was really high on Montrezl Harrell, or the plays I recommended yesterday did not do well. I guess that's the smarter way to say it. But there was one sentence which got me home, which was like 20 minutes into the show. I said, I think I'm quoting myself, I wouldn't be 5 lineups in. You know what? I wouldn't be 3 lineups in until I built a lineup where I think Denver absolutely smashes Washington. And in that lineup, I play Plumlee and Jeremy Grant and Jordan McRae. And like 5 people tweeted me. They were like, well, as soon as you said that, I'm like, well, I'm playing more than 3 lineups. I should make one of those. And then they put those 3 guys in and playing those 3 guys. And that sort of forced you, because you thought that game was going crazy, to play usually Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And it turned out that was a really good lineup, because that was like the best 3 value plays and the top 2 scoring guys on the slate. So I just think it's funny how everyone has rose tinted glasses, and like I got a lot of credit for crap that was like, thank God I was really on for those 11 seconds, because otherwise I thought it was a pretty pedestrian show for me. Worked out. Shout out Rimpack. Shout out to a lot of people made a lot of money yesterday based on 10 seconds there. But again, I'm really lucky relative to you and Lofty and Adam, who have to go through a whole lot of statistical minutia so I can talk about this one time I saw a video of this guy playing street ball. So.
Today was rough. A lot of hours in the spreadsheet today, just getting shit ready.
I can't imagine. It's tough for me sometimes because I use 1% of what I see.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like frequently I'll go in there and I'll look at this and I'll look at that and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And I'll look at that and I'll go rewatch a video and I'll do the whole thing and I'll go in and I'll project a guy and then I'll go look and he's ranked and owned appropriately. And I'm like, okay, well, that time was useless. Let's try it again. And then so just digging and digging and digging. And you try to find 2, needles in a haystack, or 2 pearls, or just a couple pivot points in the, the Zach LaVine or whatever, the big plays they get you there. But it's always really weird for me in that literally over the course of today, I probably looked at 6,000 pieces of information and then passed on 38 of them. So it's just, it always feels weird that it gets distilled to that point. Well, that's not good. They're just destroying Sacramento. Like I need the
He's
game
gonna play
to stay.
28 minutes.
Yeah, I mean he'll have 67 in that time. So
I hope
that's
not.
fine. He's
That's
got
for my
4
sake.
points. He's got 4 points and 7 rebounds in 5 minutes.
As long as he stays away from the stocks, I think I could be okay. But we're going to pack it in. Live before lock is over for today. No NBA content tomorrow whatsoever. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, everybody. Nolan Kelly and I will be live tomorrow, an hour before NFL games start for NFL Live Before Lock. No days off for this guy. No day. And Nolan doesn't celebrate this because he's Canadian. So
well, he had his Thanksgiving. It was last month.
He did. And I think we said enjoy.
That's nice. Biombo has a bucket. He has nothing else. He has 2 fantasy points in 3 minutes, but he has made a basket. He has made his only shot. That's a lot for him.
No Biombo, no cash.
That's like I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna absolutely cry if it's like double. Oh.
Guys, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy your turkey naps. Thank you to everybody that donated super chats. Thank you to the people that didn't, that just hit a thumbs up. We appreciate all of you. I give very many thanks to everyone that watches these shows that allows me to do this for a living. Pretty dope. Eddie, you got anything else before we get out of here?
I appreciate you. I'm thankful for you, Josh.
I'm thankful for you as well.
Oh, thanks.
Virtual hug.
All right. Back Friday, baby.
Later, guys.
Oh, no, I'm back Saturday. You're back Friday.
I am back Friday. I
get 2 days off. I don't know what to do. It's great.
I got nothing. Later, guys.